Tim, they're
Yeah.
saying we're not live yet.
Nope.
Okay, there it goes. We just clicked live, Chris. We were trying to work it out. Something was going on.
Oh man.
Yeah, we that's what we were trying to do behind the scenes.
I just saw the chat and they're like, we can't see y'all.
Yeah, sorry about that. We were
And take two.
So basically what we're saying is I'm Chris. Y'all know me as Elgato Azul. This is my co-host Jamie. This is the one and only Tim Scott, Epic Catfish. You can find Tim on Facebook. No,
I don't hardly ever get on Facebook.
You'll never get a hold of Tim on Facebook. No. You can find Tim sometimes on YouTube, Epic Catfish. He's more on TikTok these days. He's always doing big things. If you don't know Tim, he's a living legend in the catfish industry. He's caught more 100-pounders probably than anyone I've ever met. He's caught a fish that was at the time probably a world record. He didn't certify. But Tim's a great guy. He's been doing this longer than anyone I know. We were talking earlier. I asked Tim. So I've known Tim about 2 years, but Tim's first flathead he caught in 1979. And I basically asked him, tell us a little bit about that. So,
well, and I had caught a flathead about that same time, and it was just a little one, but I was just a little kid then. I was 10 years old. And so we were down at the dam at Shelbyville, below the gates, the spillway. My parents had always heard, and they were terrible fishermen, actually. So to try to go catch flatheads, they take me down there. We stay till midnight, all this stuff. They got Zebco 33s, 10-pound test, and pistol grip, handle rods trying to catch flatheads. It really never worked. But this particular day, I had caught one in the rocks. And then an old man came up and said, "Hey, son, you want to see something?" Which is a weird thing to ask a 10-year-old, no doubt. But what he meant was he had a big fish. So we walked up to the parking lot, and laying in the trunk, this old man had a 40-pound flathead, and it was the biggest, scariest, meanest looking thing I ever saw, and I was in love ever since. I like dinosaurs and Komodo dragons and Godzilla and all that stuff. I liked real monsters, and there was one in the back, a real life one, right in someone's trunk of his car. So that hooked me ever since.
What'd you catch the first one on?
My first one?
Yeah.
Green sunfish, about the size of my hand. Matter of fact, that very first one, the little one, I caught on a small green sunfish. My first successful 50, which didn't come all that long, probably 5-6 years. And I should say, my parents were terrible fishermen. They meant well. They were way under tackled, and they only did it, but they really did try to catch flatheads. And I promised my mom, I said, once I get my boat, all these years of you trying to catch a big flathead, I'm going to take you up to the dam wall, and you're going to catch flathead. Well, I did that very thing. They were camping down there. I decided I was going to go down there. I put my mom in the boat. We went up to the wall, and I had driven like an eye bolt into the Corps of Engineers dam, which is probably illegal, but there's no way to really anchor up there. So, I was pretty determined. Well, I set the baits out, and the first fish that went down was 45 pounds, and my 4'11" mom was the most excited thing you've ever seen. She was just beaming, and she caught that one fish. She was done.
What kind of equipment were you using back then?
Oh my gosh. I think I had actually graduated to Garcia 6500s, which now that those feel like little thread spools to me. They feel like little Zebco 33. But before that, I was using Zebco 33s and pure fiberglass kind of bass rods and all that. I mean, I've landed some monstrosity fish on 10 and 15 pound stren is what we used to use. And Stren blue, or ultra clear, and 4/0 true turn bass hooks, because that's all you could get. Then I went the other way. As soon as then fishermen came out with advertising some of the catfish stuff, I bought these gigantic O'Shaughnessy hooks, which are the darn things were about as thick as this pencil.
Like a giant kale hook, right?
Yeah. Well, I used those too, but this was just your general shark-looking hook. It was. I think it was the LO42 style, only in the gigantic gap. But the problem with that is the rods that we used in those days were too limber. The light was a little too, the line was a little too light, and the hooks were a little too thick. So to get a great hook set on a giant flathead at any distance was difficult. So yeah, I've been down the road of having 70-pound flatheads at the boat open their mouth, spit the bait, and swim away. Wow. And so that was a little bit of a heartbreaker when I was young. And I used to bite into what people would tell me. You go to the bait shop and you go, "What are they biting on?" Well, they'd reach in the fridge and pull out a pack of livers, and then maybe some hot dogs. And then they'd say, "Well, if you really want to catch a really big one, you got to get like a 2-foot sucker." And I'm thinking to myself, a 2-foot sucker in that current, how in the heck am I? But I did it. I mean, I tried it. I tried it on 2 or 3 different rivers, and I got bites, but they would never get the hook. Flatheads are kind of finicky. I mean, you could probably use a 2-foot sucker on a trot line or a limb line or something like that to wait for the right fish to come by, but boy, I sure wouldn't use them on rod and reel unless I knew they were huge and so aggressive. It would just be fun. It would be great if I could just truthfully tell somebody, "Yep, I use 2-foot suckers."
So when you were first starting out and you were targeting these spots, were they just pretty much like dams? Floodgate type stuff?
I did a whole lot of different things. In my local area, we've got what you call Corps of Engineer lakes. They were made.
That's here.
They've got a medium to small spillway. You can't cast across it, but it's probably 100 yards wide. And a hole might be 25, 30 foot deep. You might go and anchor up at the dam by, driving a stake into the Corps of Engineers cement stuff. That you'd probably go to jail for that now. But, you go downriver and fish log jams, 6, 8, 12, 15, 20 foot of water. Then I started, as soon as I bought a jet, I had to buy a jet first because the Rock River is in Illinois, became a very famous flathead river. And so, I don't think I was probably out of high school much when I bought my first Sea Arc because I had other ones. I had a bass tracker, one of them things that are like a bathtub. It was only 16 foot long, 48-inch width, and it had a freaking 40 horse with a long shank on it. And I hit every rock in the Congo with it, and I decided this is just not going to work. Yeah, I mean.
Well, Tim, when did you and how did you learn to where to fish? I mean, how do you pick your spots out? When did you start really realizing what worked good for you?
A ton of trial and error. I mean, a ton. I used to work like 10 to 12 hours a day for 4 days so I could be off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I took a major promotion in which I would have had a lot more money, but I also would have had less time. So I kind of talked the owner into kind of going half with me and giving me 30 days vacation. And so with 30 days vacation, you can bet I fished every ounce of 30 days. I used to I used to just look at a map. I mean, we had phones, but we didn't have like smartphones where you could just say, "Hey, give me directions to such and such." I got gazetteers or gazetters, what everybody wants to call them. You got them for Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Missouri, all that. And they would show rivers and they would show boat ramps and they would show roads. So I would just drive. It was not unusual for me to drive 1,000 miles in a weekend because I'd go to one river and go, nah, this isn't it. You know, it looked good. It looked good on the map, but you know, you just don't know if it's got the right current, it's got the right depth. Sometimes they'd be terrible. There's always fish there, but is it the kind of river? And I learned the kind of river where if I look at it, I can pretty much tell you if it's a good flathead river or not, or it's a so-so flathead river. So, you know, I fished probably, I don't think I'd be exaggerating to say 100 different rivers and tributaries, you know, within about a 7-state area, all the way from Minnesota, you know, like mid-Minnesota, Minnesota River, the upper Mississippi, the Skunk, the Wapsie, you know, I just keep naming them. But, and I did it a lot more of the year than I do now, because I now know what that cold water season is up in my area, you know, where half of TikTok is, you know, catching giant fish down on the, you know, down on the Tennessee, and they're all catching fish on the East Coast. We're still frozen in here. You know, and the bite's really not any good until about, you know, late May for flatheads. I mean, yeah, I could go tear up channel cats from, you know, 3 to probably 10, 12 pound average. Might catch 50, 60, 70 a day. The most I've ever caught is 200 on the old Scary River when the bite was good and there was lots of fish in there. But that has kind of lost its luster for me in my old days. You know, I don't want to anchor 50 times. I want to anchor 14 times. You know, I'll still, you know, anchor 25 times in a day and really get after it, but not that 50, 60, 70 times and running the river like that, you know, and, you know, catching doubles and triples and all that. I've done that. What I'm really interested in now is just going out and trying to catch the biggest fish that I can put on the end of my line.
When did you learn, when you were young, when did you learn, hey, this is what I want to do? I want to go after the big ones. I mean, when did that really just take a hold of you to know that's what I
Maybe I'm weird, but I had a little creek behind my house that I would go to at 6 years old, and I found every which way that I could find to catch a chub. That's all we had. There was no suckers, there was no bullheads, there was no smallmouth, no nothing. It was just chubs. And so I became a master at catching the biggest chub in my stretch of creek. And I didn't like little ones after that. I'm like, I want a super chub. I want those 12 inchers, you know, they're like that big around. And they weren't that plentiful. You just had to figure out how to do it. And, you know, I even used a fly rod. I got to where, you know, I would experiment with baits, slugs and bugs and grasshoppers and worms and, you know, whatever. But so I guess I've been always inclined to be kind of the guy that likes the biggest challenge or the biggest fish, I guess. You know, but it really got a hold of me once I really started getting into flatheads and stuff, you know, at 15 or 16. And the failures, I mean, failures drove me probably more than successes, you know, especially, you know, because even though I didn't know what I was doing, I was still out there enough, and I was putting it to the test. And every once in a while, and I think I was explaining this same thing before we were live, that the tackle that I was using was terrible. I had too light a line, too limber of a rod, and too thick of hooks. And so I've had, you know, I got lucky and, you know, went to the Mississippi or went to a major tributary and had a 70 get off at the side of the boat, just open its mouth and spit it because my tackle wasn't good enough, or I end up breaking the line on what I felt was a big fish. And so that would drive me even a little bit more.
Well, I know myself, you know, even tackle to this day, you know, I'm still figuring out what's the best, which way's the best way to go. I mean, you
the cat. Sorry.
But
things gotten into meowing because it wants to go outside. It's not an outside cat. But if my wife is out there, that thing will drive you nuts.
But yeah, even though my tackle, you know, at a young age, I went through all kinds of tackle, learning. Every time I went fishing, it was just constantly, man, I got to do something different. This isn't working. I mean, just trying to come up with that strategy just drove me crazy. You know,
absolutely.
Trying to find out the best.
You know, I don't often think this way about years and years ago, but I can remember my dad, he had a tackle box with every kind of lure in it. And that was one of my favorite things to do. is get into that tackle box. It was the old style, the big giant green one that like opened this way, and then it had the trays that kind of scissored out, and it had all the stuff in the bottom and all the whatever. So the jitterbugs and the plugs and the batsarinos, and even down to there was a little rubber frog that was kind of like a fly deal. He went to college at Southern, and they had, they got Rend Lake and Little Grassy and all that stuff like right across the street from where he was at. So yeah, and luckily my parents did take me camping and fishing, and it really stuck. I mean,
this is like Rebecca was showing me the first reels, the old Mitchells. This is the style stuff that we learned to fish with. And
and that was 100 times better than my old stuff. I had a pen 2-aught that I bought, and it was so old. It was like it was like that brown hard plastic on the sides.
Yeah.
It had no pawl. It was just and it had this little green handle. Oh my! And the clicker, you could hear the clicker 6 blocks away.
My first reel was the Bantam 100 Shimano, and the reason I bought it is because Jimmy Houston said, "Hey, if you want to go catch some bass," this was 1981 or 82. He said, "You want to go catch some bass? Get you this Shimano Bantam 100 reel. Get you this Terminator spinner bait with the diamond blade, and just go catch fish." And I did that, and that Shimano reel, and he's like, and a bullwhip Shimano rod, and I thought I had it made, man. I took that rod and reel, and caught bass, and then I started catching some catfish, and when I transitioned to catfishing, I used all my bass gear.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I mean, I smoked all that crap. About the first month I had it, it was destroyed.
Oh yeah, I still have a box in my garage of reels that I have destroyed, and I'll bet you it weighs 50 pounds.
So when you tell your stories of growing up, those are the exact stories that I had, and the same stuff that I remember. We grew up in similar times, so
yeah.
I think when we tried to go fish, it was a learning experience. Nobody was really going to tell you the good secrets.
No.
You just had to go do it, and trial and error, just being constantly out there. I lived on the lake, so I was lucky to be able to fish every day, but just put in lots of time trying to figure them out. I have a sense that you were kind of like me in a low water situation when a lot of guys are like, you can't even fish this. I would go out there and it'd be dry ground, and I would be looking at the dry ground to see when it flooded where I could go. Yeah, I'm going to go. I can't wait till this has water in it, because I'm going to hammer them. I mean.
Well, and I used to wade the Spoon River a lot, as a kid, and shoot, Sean still does. Sean, he goes down to the Spoon River, which I live at on the West Fork. There's 2 forks of the Spoon River, and it basically is like a giant creek up where we're at, but then it joins together and it goes another 90 miles and it dumps into the Illinois River. So in the spring, if we get the right amount of high water, and this took me a long time to figure out too, if we don't get high water in April or May, we don't get channel cats from the main river coming all the way up here. We get locals. And how you know is that when you start catching them, if they're like dark colored, that means that they've seen sunlight, because it's not a deep river. They've seen sunlight all year. They've wintered here.
Yeah.
If you're coming up with snow white ones that have been in deep water and muddy water all winter, and they haven't even it only takes them 2 or 3 days to run that. They'll run 30 miles a day if necessary, or stop in the deeper water, but there's no way to hide from the sun up here. And they're bigger and they're beefier, they're tall like this, and 32 to 36 inches long, some of them, but the other ones that are locals are rather skinny, torpedo looking, and they're dark. So that and I used to weigh it, and if you find neck deep up here, that's deep. That's deep up here.
Yeah.
Most of it's waist deep,
The
That's
water
like-
snakes swimming by you.
Yeah, you know what? I liked snakes when I used to catch them as a kid.
I did too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved them.
Now y'all can have them.
I don't. These days, I don't like being around them when I'm fishing. But when I was a kid, I was fearless.
I had 4 and 5 foot common water snake pets. I had snapping turtle. I drug everything into my mom and dad's house. I bought my own aquariums.
Those were pets.
Yeah,
That's what you call pets.
Yeah. So I had chubs and I had catfish and I had all kinds of different stuff. And I would feed like a 10-pound snapping turtle that was like stuck in a little 25-gallon tank. And I was amazed at how he would just creep up like this is his head. You got the little chub, he'd eyeball it and just go boom, like this and snap it in half. It was the greatest thing. But talk about stink. Those turtles are some stinky things. And filters were terrible back in those days, and it was a constant work. You constantly had to clean them out and all that stuff. And you hear your mom at dinner, when are you going to clean that tank out? When are you going to clean that tank out? I got other stuff to catch, Mom. I'm leaving.
I need a bigger tank so I can get more stuff.
Speaking of a tank, when I was little, we go out brim fishing with my father and stuff, and we had an aquarium. We would put the brim in and constantly just watching and had different things set, just watching their techniques and learning about the brim. And then sometimes we would have a bass in there or sometimes have a small catfish. It was just standing there watching them. It was amazed at what all they do.
Yes. And I soon, even though we don't have blue cats, and especially back in those days, we had no blue cats. But I somehow became friends because I was always at the river, always here, always there. There was a DNR biologist that asked me if I wanted a blue cat because they were planning on stocking them in southern Illinois, and he had some blue cats. So I had a small blue cat at one time, and I thought, man, this thing is just going to be voracious. It's never going to miss. You know what? If he never missed when his activity level was right. But when he was kind of lackadaisical, he struck and missed all the time. Yeah. So, and it wasn't just that fish. It's things like that. Flatheads are the same way. When they'll hit once, but they don't really have the energy to hit again, you know what's happening. When you get that initial hit and he spits a bait, he'll never come back. You could leave it there all day and he doesn't come back. Sometimes they will, but man, they just, there's just little things that you can learn.
Oh yeah, I learned so much by just watching them.
Yeah,
just in an aquarium, right in the living room. Learned so much, taught me so much. So when I went fishing, you pick up on little details and try to use it out while you were fishing.
Yeah, I always found it interesting that when there's a thunderstorm outside, my fish in the aquarium all of a sudden start coming up off the bottom and start moving around. I'm like, man, they know there's this thunderstorm coming. Like. Now all my minnows in here get destroyed. It's like, I think that's cool. Yeah.
Now a little later,
tell us about your big man-sized aquarium that you built at the house.
That's what I'm going to talk about. So, of course, I got to do everything to an extreme, because I get my mind gets clicking around something. So pretty soon I've got 1,000-gallon bulk round tank with a biological filter that I built, and it's literally 4 feet deep and 12 feet across, and I could get that current whipping like this all the way around, so I could see how they would react. I could put those big concrete blocks and pieces of wood in there and see how they would relate to that. I could change up the current. I had 3 speeds on it: fast, medium, and slow. I kept them in the winter. I could probably talk for another 3 hours. I did a study, one of the first ones, on whether channel cats could see color or not, and I actually came up with a conclusion and published it. So, and that wasn't easy. It took almost 2 years of intensive training.
I saw a fairly recent study that said that they like the color blue. That they ran these lures through a 5,000-gallon tank, and that blue one got hit considerably amount more than the other colors. Why blue? Who knows why, but they said it was enough to say that they preferred that color blue. over, red, pink. Like I would think red. To me, red or pink looks like an injured fish.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought I'm gonna put a little red or pink on mine so it looks bloody or injured or distressed.
Well, I did my study with a red and a green light because they're actually opposites on they're polar opposites on the scale. So to make a long story short, I would make it so that a certain light was turned on a certain color when I fed them, because channel cats, after a while, they'll do the Pavlovian dog response where they'll start to act before you even put any food. They're actually the most trainable. Flatheads are not trainable at all. Blues are minimally trainable. Channel cats being the I guess jack of all trades that they are, and accepting of habitats and most foods, they were the easiest to train. But generally, I would turn one light on, and I would feed them. And to take me out of the equation, I also had the light on, because every time I walked up there, they weren't just associating the light, they were associating me walking up there and the light. So I had to take myself out of it and do like an automatic thing, which I didn't have servos and all that crap back in the day. So I'd have to load this thing up and then like pull it like this and then shoot it from where they couldn't see me. They couldn't see me come into the garage. It's a big, long story, but I took myself out of the equation. Then I started I'd feed them on green, feed them on green, feed them on green, not feed them on red, not feed them on red, not feed them on red. And then by the time I was turning the green on with no food at all, they would rise up off the bottom, not seeing me, not seeing the whatever. They were conditioned. They could see that color. Yeah. Now, the only way to know, because the lights were in two different locations, I had to switch the lights, because if they were reacting to just the position of the light, then they couldn't see the difference of the color. But no matter where I put the green or the red, they would not do anything when the red came on, and then they'd rise up off the bottom in anticipation when the green turned on. So that was pretty cool, but it took a long time to do it. And I actually got pretty good college credit for it, so that was good.
Tim, I got to know, when, we all start as a little boy with a box like this. We keep going in and in. When you go fishing right now, do you know exactly 100% the technique you're going to use, or do you always try different things to see if one day this might work better? I mean,
I have 4 distinct patterns that I use, and it's not always number one pattern is going to be the thing. That changes with time of year, water level, and the fish that I'm targeting. So, am I going to fish deep? That's a question. If it's for flatheads, no. Am I going to fish deep for blue cats? Yes, except for in the winter. I'm going to fish shallow. You blue cat guys know that. Am I going to use big baits? Am I going to use small baits? Am I going to move around a lot, or am I going to sit? I mean, so there's 4 distinctive patterns that I use. And my most successful one, and I've even put it out on TikTok. I've put it out. I've talked about it in my live shows. And you know what? Everybody that's watching, don't get upset that I'm on TikTok, because most of my stuff y'all have already watched. I just copy the stuff off of my live shows, and when I went live in the kitchen, and little clips of my videos and stuff. So it's not that, and I truly enjoy it, but I don't have time these days to make like this monumental movie that I'm going to put on YouTube that takes me 30 hours to do. I can put out a 1 to 2 minute TikTok thing while I'm drinking coffee in the morning before I have to go to work. That is a little bit different. So don't get all upset. I haven't left you. Sean and I are going to do lives on YouTube. I'm not dreaming about doing TikTok and having 3,900 people in there, of which nobody has an intelligent question. Y'all are the greatest, and you know it.
So there's a question that says, I've always seen guys hit the deep channels and ledges while dragging for blues in the winter. And that's funny, because I'll go on Tim's live, and he's the way that he fishes in the winter, or maybe his winter's a little different than ours. Different than ours, but the way we fish in the winter is different. Our water temperature in the winter is like 44 degrees. His water temperature in the winter is frozen over. When our fish go deep at about 45 degrees, they tend to go in 40-foot deep of water or deeper And Tim says, I fish shallow. I do know some guys here that fish shallow, but the majority of fishing that I do when what I call the winter pattern is 40 for here, it's 45 degrees down to about 35 degrees. We go deep.
And we go deep too. What I'm talking about is on the rarity that we have that extended warm period, and we will get them here where it'll be warm for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, and when I wrote for North American Fishermen, I tried to convince them to let me do an article on what the area of the country is that true wintering happens with catfish, because the whole East Coast doesn't have true wintering. Most of the bottom tier of the United States, it's really only in the heartland that we get that, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, upper Missouri, not even lower Missouri, upper Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, all that. That is your true wintering zone. And that's how that, and because the in-fisherman guys were from Iowa, that's why they started talking about true wintering. And
so y'all's wintering, they go for here about 38, 37 degrees. We start to get a pretty significant shad kill. And that's when our big fish will go into what we call the wintering pattern. A lot of guys here, they don't know what a winter pattern is because we don't get it every year. Yeah. But, at 37 degrees, we get a big shad kill. They all go, our fish will pile into the deepest hole in the lake, even if it's only a foot deeper than the rest. They'll pile into that hole. Every fish in the lake will go in there, feed on those dying shad for about 2 weeks, and then it changes.
And also, you have a lake situation where you get distinct stratification. In rivers that we have, there is no distinct stratification. That water is constantly there is, but to get warmer water, you got to go shallow, because all that center stuff is all mixed and it's all cold. There's not cold at the bottom and then warmer at the top in that current zone. You got to get off of that main channel, and then that'll be a few degrees warmer. That's why I'm saying a lot of times I'll go shallow. But if it's true wintering, where it's been 32, 33 degrees and cold nights and all that stuff, and I'm trying to catch blues, I'm going to go deep too. But I'm going to have access to shallow because I want to know. I don't, the other thing, our bite windows are so short in the winter because they don't really need to eat that much. Now in a lake situation, they may, especially down there where your average temperature is going to be higher.
Really our fish feed up. Our fish really feed up then. The guys are like, man, we go small.
They do.
I'm like, but here we go big. It's I'd say probably when our water temperature hits about, I'd say 55 to 45, that's the time of year our fish feed absolutely the hardest, and they're the easiest to pattern. Mm-hmm. They really stack up into larger groups. When I say large groups, it'll be, if you're in a lake, it'll be maybe a 10 to 20 acre area in the lake. If you can find that 10 to 20 acre area, it's just loaded with giant fish, and you'll catch them. You can fill the boat all day long in an area like that.
That situation does not exist to my knowledge on the Mississippi where I fish, where you'll have an area loaded with giant fish. I might have to look really close at 3 miles to find 2 giant fish. Okay.
So when you find them, are they piled around a giant pile of bait, or are they just looking for a piece of structure to ambush?
It's basically, and I really don't fish a lot for blues before August 1, because my fish move and spread out. If you watch my lives, one of the reasons why we are in vicinity of the dam that you see us fish is because we get a signal. If we go down, I don't get a signal. Hopefully with my new phone, it's actually 5G, not old 3G that you can barely hear, and it's all staticky and all that. So hopefully we can go to better areas. But if I was to say, like, before we even hit the live button, Sean and I have already looked at 5 to 7 miles of river. And we have looked at 15 potential giant fish spots. and I will rate.
How long does it take you to find your spots before you're like, let's do this?
I can choose a spot in an hour, but it's not necessarily going to be the smartest move because I'm trying to figure out where I need to be to ambush the biggest and most numbers, because of course I'm on a live show. So I'm
Right.
trying to get multiples of big fish in the boat. And I've got to choose out of 10 to 15 spots. I got to rate it 1 to 15, or actually 1 to 10, because you'll never get to 15 spots on a live show at night on the Mississippi. There's just areas that barges will just run you over and they won't even think twice. So I've got to choose that, and then I've also got to re-rate them once I see what the bite is. We haven't even fished yet. We've just looked at areas. So then I say, okay, this is spot number 1, and I think spot number 1 is going to be good an hour before dark to an hour after dark. That's usually what kind of spot I pick, because a lot of times during the day in August, we can throw all the baits in their face that you want to, and they'll go, or they'll nibble it. They'll go, and it's not I can tell the difference between a fish that is investigating my bait like a shark, or it's a little fish. And there's a lot, and how I know this is because I'll turn my sensitivity way up and see how many fish are in the area. I may only have 2 fish that are 4 foot long in one area, and there's no other little fish at all. So if I'm getting a bite and it's just going, don't, and it pulls down a little bit like a blue and goes, toop, and just lets it go, I know exactly what's doing it. It's not going rat tat tat. It's not going ta-tonk and going fast. It's slow.
That's what tail whip is. The tail whip determines on your rod how big that fish is.
Just the
when
initial
you're seeing
hit.
That's a small fish. When you're seeing this,
sucks the bait in and just backs up a little bit, and then lets go. Fish. That's a big fish. Yeah. So and a lot of people, they probably doubt what I'm saying if they.
That's a hard thing to figure out, Tim. I really only figured it out the last 3 years. I've been fishing my whole life.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize what I was seeing until I've caught a million of them.
Buddy, I can tell how big a fish is on TikTok when I'm scrolling through and I see somebody get a hit, like it's a huge take. Oh, look at that huge fish. I'm like, no, it isn't. It's 20 pounds.
Yeah, my buddy's like, oh, that's a little chewer. I'm like, no, that's a giant. That's a big. Look at the tail whip on that.
You need this, and then you need that slow movement before it even hesitates. That 12 inches or more before it even hesitates. I mean, I'm not 100% right, but I'm pretty good about 90 to knowing what a fish is going to be.
And Tim, you were talking a while ago about fishing the river. Myself, being from South Carolina, we've got river. Then I can travel to Santee Cooper within a couple hours. And during that wintertime bite, my river fishing is totally opposite from what I'm doing on that lake. So when I'm going from one to the other, I might be deep over here. I might be shallow in my river, depending on, the depth and the temperature and all that. It's pretty amazing how much difference there is in a lake and a river. I mean, there's a lot of difference.
Yeah, a ton.
And that just amazes me, being, a catfisherman, how much knowledge it takes to go from one to the other. And, like us fishing tournaments, it's tough for a river fisherman sometimes to go to a lake and fish a tournament against them guys. It really is.
And you know what? I would not rate myself as a great lake fisherman. I can do it, but I don't love it. And I'm not putting lakes down. It's just I'm just a river guy and always have been, and I have developed that whole mantra of being able to locate fish according to current first, depth second, cover third. That's my whole equation.
One thing I think that's impressive about you, Tim, is that you can go to waters that aren't necessarily known for big fish and still catch a big fish. I don't know how you do that, but a lot of guys say that's a lucky son. I'm like, no, guys that are consistently catching big fish, there has zero to do with luck. It just has everything to do with the lots and lots of time on the water. You've seen
it has a tiny bit to do with luck. There is, there's a little bit of luck in everything.
There's definitely luck in fishing.
That's right.
If you go fishing and you got 5 chances at a good fish that day, you're not going to get them all. But on a lucky day, you get every one of them.
On an active day, yeah, you do.
On an
The
unlucky
luck,
day, you might not get
the luck
any of them.
is like what Sean and I had the other day. We fished a myriad of great spots that are consistent producers of big flatheads. We just went Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, and we couldn't hardly get a bite in any of these spots. And these aren't like big basin holes where you got to wait for them to come to you. You're pretty much putting them pretty much right in their face. It's fronts of barges, leading edges of wood, 15 foot with the right current and blah, blah, blah. And we're spreading baits out around this stuff and blah, blah, blah. So we couldn't hardly get a bite, especially on live bait. So we pull into an area that we have fished before. It's 10 foot, kind of comes around an island, and it goes from 10 foot right underneath the boat and crashes down into 20 in about a half a cast. Well, there's little, I'd say cantaloupe size boulders strewn where this current is just piping through here. I mean, just piping. So I throw it outside the current with 20-pound test. I didn't throw 50 because 50 won't stay out there. 3-ounce sinker and a freaking shad head about like that. And we hit probably a low 50s, a high 40s, low 50s. And it didn't even hardly stop moving. Now, we were in the right spot. I could have, if I didn't know anything, I would have been fishing all wrong all day. I fished all right all day, but the bite was so bad, we got lucky with one big fish. And you know what everybody says? All it takes is one big fish to make a great trip. And
That's for sure. That's right. For sure.
You know, but as far as going to other places, it is difficult. You try to get as much recon as you can. And then I look at maps. I look at topo maps. I look at whatever. I notice how, say it's a wide river, a wide, slow river. I want to go to a narrow down, a neck down area where it picks up some current if the current's low. If the water's high, I kind of want to look at a few current breaks. And it depends on what time of year, you know, and I was telling you this story when we were on the phone the other day, Chris. I once sat on one fish for 3 days. And
we're going to go into some of these stories. Hopefully, if you good. But I mean, you probably got a million of them. But
yeah,
that was a pretty awesome story. And you know, why don't we go ahead and get into that one? Let me show a picture. Right. Let me show a picture of that fish real quick. I've got a picture here, and tell us about what you were doing, why you were there, and kind of the whole story behind catching this fish.
Well, Chris, that's not the fish I was talking about.
Oh, I thought this was a little mini ledge when you were on the boat.
No, that I was going to ask you if you remembered exactly what. It's the 100-pound flathead.
Okay, the one that you're holding up vertical.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How about that?
So yeah, that is and I don't know exactly how I would describe it, but a series of unfortunate events coming together in the biggest flathead I've ever caught. And we were literally, I was contacted to help information with a book called Secrets of the Catfish Pros put out by North American Fishermen. So
I've read that book, and when
I was the guy that, you know, I got a lot of the manuscripts, and I kind of got rid of a lot of fairy tales, and I helped them out with biology and behavior and all that stuff. But they asked me to go down to Cumberland Lake, which
what year was this, Tim?
Oh my gosh. 2004, 5, 6, something like that.
Okay, so right when the big catfishing started taking off.
Yeah. It was the early days, but anyway, they had contacted me because all they were was a film group. They didn't know anything about catfish. They mostly did bass and muskie and stripers and stuff like that. So they're like, hey, we want to do this catfish book. And so I was really the only, quote, catfish expert that they hired to come down to Lake Cumberland at the wrong time in the wrong lake. Because really, we should have been either farther downstream or farther upstream, because the population of fish in Cumberland, it's mainly a striper lake. It's deep and it's cold. And so I'm like, oh man. So I started calling around. I wanted to talk to people that, you know, knew something about it, and really nobody did know anything about the catfish, except for you're stupid for going to that lake if you want to catch catfish. So I said, okay, let's try to move this location. They said, oh no, it's already booked. We already got the houseboat rented for 7 days and blah, blah, blah. And we chose it because it's a relatively clear lake and we've got to get underwater photos. So I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. So the first thing I do, of course, is look at well, they were lodged, and it's early spring. They were lodged way down by the dam, which I would not have chose. I would have wanted to go way upriver and, up where it was more of a catfish type river. But no, so we're limited right now. It's another, I don't know, too far to drive a boat from that location all the way up to there. And they weren't moving because they had to do other things. But to make a long story short, on the flatheads, I went to the backs of coves first. And I found some mediocre flatheads, 40, 50 pounds. I found a couple of them that were 25 and a couple of them that were 30 in a couple of days. And that was pretty good. And I thought, okay, I'll stick with this. Except for during the day, I started wondering about these sheer drops. So it's a canyon reservoir. So it's all igneous rock, which that means granite, basically, not limestone like what I'm used to. So not far from the boat, I'm looking and I get all the way up to the bank and it's still 150 foot deep. I'm putting my transducer on the rock almost, just basically smashing my boat up against it and seeing, because the transducer's on the other side and it would actually mark, how deep it was. But I found a ledge. In about, I think it was about 40 foot. And the forage base is blueback herring. And I had brought a light because I knew, like a dock light to attract them because I didn't want to waste all my time. So I'd attract a bunch of blueback herring up there. But when I went out into the lake, I noticed that all the bluebacks are hanging around 40 foot deep. You could mark some stripers on my old Legend 2000, which I always say it, but it's kind of like Space Invaders, just dot matrix, dun, dun, dun. But I knew how big the fish were because I had caught single fish and said, okay, that's this. If it's that long on my screen, it's at this deep, blah, blah, blah. It's 4 foot or it's 5 foot if it's that long. So anyway, I marked this fish off this ledge, which the ledge is only probably a boat width. You go too far off of it and you plunge to 170 feet, but it's at 40 and it is in direct line with the clouds of bait fish that are like out in the middle. And there's a few clouds of bait. So it was kind of intersecting that. And you couldn't tell if it was a log. It looked like a log the first time I marked it. But then I came back later and it had moved position because it was, the thing was about 2 boat widths long. And it was at the leading edge when I started. And then I went back and now the log is over on the other end. I'm like, this is a fish and it's a flathead. It ain't no blue. It's been sitting there all day. So I get my blueback herring and I take my little Garcia 6500 with the 20-pound test on it, and my and my ugly stick, my 7'6" ugly stick that a lot of people would like catch crappies on. I'm exaggerating now, but it just wasn't. It's not what I use now. But anyway, I'm out there and I'm matching this. So I'm having to drive like a tent stake in the crack. So I can get my boat all done, and I'm like hoping that this fish will come to me. So I spent one entire night, didn't even go to sleep, one entire night trying to catch that flathead on that ledge in 40 foot of water over 170. So the next day, it took me 3 days, and finally I just had to kind of get it to where I thought it was on my thing and just kind of match it and just keep bumping my stuff around a little bit and letting it sit, bumping around, letting it sit, and thank goodness the thing bit after 3 days. And it was wild because I yanked the tent stakes out and just free floated because I didn't even have a trolling motor. And that thing literally tugged me out into the middle in front of the dam right there. And I'll bet it took me on that rig, I'll bet it took me almost an hour. Wow. And I was really, really, really hoping it didn't break my line. I mean, I was pulling drag myself because the drag was kind of janky. I mean, and talk about an adrenaline rush. Holy moly.
Well, I've got to ask you. I mean, you said the first time you marked it, you thought it was a log.
Yeah.
I mean, what caused you to go back and double check it? I mean,
because it didn't have any things hanging off of it. It was just a lump like this. It had a little bit of separation on my old dot matrix thing, just a little tiny, I mean, a tiny bit of separation, but it wasn't like up off the bottom. But then when it was over on the other side, there was a little bit more separation because evidently it was head down, tail up a little. And that's one thing about the dot matrix. It will kind of show you the thicker end of the fish a little bit. Not great, but you really had to do some interpretation on that.
Yeah, I just had to know because, I mean, a lot of fishermen, you know, you would think, okay, it's a log, they're going to move on. But, you know, I just wanted to find out what drove you to just go back, had to know, you know, that had to check it again.
I did it recently during a live show where I moved into an area I hadn't fished for 15 years. And I was in disbelief because even my Helix 9, I was marking what could either be fish, and they were giant, and it seemed like too many of them. There was like 15 of them in like a 30-foot basin hole that wasn't anything special. And they were all belly to the bottom. And I looked on shore, and I looked again, and there was like these concrete culverts that were about 30 inches around and 4 foot long. So I thought, oh, a flood washed these things in. Sean, let's go. Let's go looking. So we went to the Missouri River. We dinked around doing this, dinked around doing that. And I said, you know what, Sean, I got to look at it again. Well, guess what? There was only 5 left. And I went, oh. So we hurried up and we set up, and I cut a big giant donkey bait, and I threw one of them, I mean, right on top of one of these things. Put the rod in the rod holder. We hadn't even started the live yet. I was getting ready to throw the other one, and that one goes down. I mean, it went down kind of 70 plus, and it was a beast. And we missed the whole fight. I got the live finally turned on when Sean he just got it unhooked and was just standing up with it. It was pretty awesome.
Wow. I got to ask you a question because, you know, this happened to us this past weekend. The river that we normally fish here is called the Great PD River here in South Carolina.
Heard it. Yep. And I've seen it. I wanted to fish it, but I was on my honeymoon.
Wow. Well, you know, it's an awesome river. You were talking about earlier, you know, some of the river's wide and then it narrows up in some places. Well, Saturday night, normally this thing's got current. I mean, we've had some good rain and this thing is really pushing. But Saturday night, we had no current. I mean, you could literally put a feather on the water, and it would take it probably 30 minutes to go past the boat.
Okay.
All the technique we were trying, normally, okay, we're going to have current. We had it completely change up. And, you know, fishing that no current, what would you suggest? I know we ended up doing pretty good, you know, Saturday night, how we changed stuff up. But to someone that hasn't, you know, been in that situation, what would you suggest to make it even better for them, to what to look for, how to change their technique?
So usually when you have a river that's normally got good current and all of a sudden it doesn't, that usually means that the water's dropping.
Yeah.
So what I immediately do is I go for the holes. That's the fight or flight mechanism of a catfish turns on as soon as that water starts to drop, especially a blue, and they will pull off of shallow water or fast water and go down into those deeper spots. Now, that doesn't mean you can catch them. That means you're going to kind of be able to catch them because usually dropping water also means a terrible bite. So I'll downsize baits. I'll move things around a little bit. I'll move. I might go, you know, whereas if it had current and I had confidence that big fish are going to be there, I might spend 45 minutes, an hour and a half on a spot. But if that water is low and slow, and I need to move and find just a few active fish within a bigger bunch, I might have to anchor 15, 20 times a day and keep moving until I can find some fish that will actually bite. The other thing I'll do is I'll go back down to the dumb 20-pound test and the little limber rods. You know, I usually carry about 4 of those in there just for that. You know, I've got my gigantic grouper rods and all that. But sometimes I need that stuff that's real limber. Now, not on the Mississippi where I target giants in the summertime, but if I'm in a power plant lake or if I'm in like a tributary off of the main, you know, Mississippi and it's slow water, I may need to do that. But usually, you know, these days I'm old and I'm kind of a one-trick pony. There's just things I don't like to do anymore. I want to go catch a Godzilla. I want to catch a donkey. I want to use donkey baits, and I want to, you know, and I want to be thrilled, and I want to get goosebumps. And that's kind of hard for this old man to get goosebumps anymore.
That's what earlier you said about going to the slimmer part of the river, trying different things. And Saturday night, the blues we were able to catch a couple, but the flatheads on the river with no current, I mean they were turned on.
They was moving.
They were moving. I mean,
Yep.
we were actually ended up with 15 decent size flatheads, and nothing gigantic because what we were trying to mark and stuff. It just seems like we couldn't find those big ones that we were looking for in some of the places where you normally would see them. So we changed our techniques up and averaged, between 15 to 20-pound flatheads is what we
flatheads are really hard to mark no matter what, because they are so sleek and their skin actually is made to reflect sonar waves, sound waves in the water. So, I mean, their skin is made to absorb it and to deflect it. So a lot of times a flathead will not show up very well, and the bottom could be littered with them. They just look like little rocks or little boulders where that it's always smooth, and you go, oh, look at this. And then you turn your sensitivity up, and you might see a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red right in this inner part. But you can't see the rest of it. And then you got to kind of triangulate over it and go, oh, is that a flathead? Oh, yeah, it's a flathead. Especially if they'll get up for you. If they'll get up for you, I mean, shoot, these new ones, it even looks like a flathead a lot of times. But if they won't get up for you, if they're not up suspended, and flatheads actually suspend more than a guy would think. But if they're not real active, it's pretty tough. Or if they're protecting like a tree or a root ball or a barge or I don't care what it is, a baby buggy that's down in the water, they may decide they like that baby buggy. And if you're going to catch them, you need to get it in their face. So, I would like to ask some questions here because I rarely get to talk to Chris. So, Chris, do you fish any rivers at all, or you mainly have?
If I'm fishing the river, generally it's going to be probably for alligator gar. Just because we don't have a lot of big rivers here, and our small rivers, I think, when I was younger, I would go fish them, but they just got so overfished by the limb liners and juggers that most of the big genetics are gone. To catch one over 40 here is just very rare in the river. I think it's sad, but it's just the facts. So to catch a big fish, you pretty much got to fish the lakes here. And so, I'm like you. I'm going to try to catch the biggest fish I can. And for us here in Texas, it's lake fishing. The rivers have just been destroyed.
Well, I've seen your fish, and I would even be happy to fish a lake that has numbers of big fish like that. I think it's I don't know what the limits are. I don't know whatever. It's not getting decimated. That's pretty obvious. Those 50, 60-pound fish are still pretty old, even though they're fairly young as being blues in lakes because they don't have to work that hard and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Of course, you got to have that dig from the river guy because my fish are athletic. Yeah. They have to work at it. So they're older and longer and slimmer and more muscular, of course, than lake fish are. I mean, that's you're going to hear that from every catfish.
I think Texas fish are probably a little more stressed out than other areas. Our summers guys are like, well, how come y'all don't catch them in the summer? I'm like, our fish get super stressed out in the summer. You think that they would be really active in that hot water. It's the opposite. They become so lethargic. They will feed, but it is a very short bite window in the daytime. They may feed out of a 24-hour period. A bigger fish maybe an hour out of that time. And you know what? They're so spread out. They're very hard to target.
Chris, that is one of the biggest secrets about giant fish is their bite window is short. And I know that their bite window is short. Their bite window, even on a hot bite, is only 45 minutes to an hour.
And they don't want something small generally. Guys are like, oh, yeah, you catch them on a small bait. And I'm like, yeah, I've caught some on a small bait. But if you look at the percentage of my big fish, I catch a much larger percentage of fish on my really big baits. Now, there are times where, obviously, high pressure, no wind, things like that, where we downsize and go really small. But when the conditions are ripe, I'm going really big. Most guys don't go as big as me. They're like, they're like, what is that thing? I'm like, that's what You're about to find
bait.
out, buddy.
Donkey bait. That's all. That's what it is. So, you know, I'll use baits up to about 3 pounds.
Yeah.
Now, that's only because it's so big and round that it barely fits in a catcher's mitt. I'm not a fan of using the big long baits because they'll carry that. And we go back to our fish tank days. You'll see, I mean, I've even kept 40 and 50 pound catfish in my big tank, my 1,000-gallon tank. You'll see them take a live fish and take half of it and then move for 20 minutes like a dang gar.
Yep.
David Smith, what's going on? I love David Smith. He's in all the stuff. So, but yes, I don't have the confidence in a really long bait. And, you know, even baits that are, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12 inches long, I have literally seen the big bite down 12. It lets the whole thing up. By the time I reel it in, I've got a crush mark on it with a tooth pad that's 2.5 inches wide on both sides. I knew it was a blue. And I'm like, it eats me up. It eats me up that I didn't shorten up that bait.
So you anchor. Traditionally, you're an anchor fisherman. And I think when you anchor and when you drag, it's almost, I don't know if it's polar opposites, but it's very opposite. When I fish on anchor, I fish short baits. They're chunky. I don't mind chunking things up, but when I drag, I use almost the whole fish. I want it to look as natural as possible and injured as I'm dragging through the water. But I do add a stinger hook behind the dorsal fin because those giant fish, they do come up and do an injury bite. And I think when you crank down on one that's doing an injury bite, you lose them a lot.
I like that terminology, an injury bite.
They are a lot like a shark, really.
Yeah.
Where they come up and do something to try to hurt that thing.
Yep.
And they look at it to see what happened. If it's injured, they go ahead and come back for, you know, and hammer that thing. But that injury bite is one of the hardest things to hook up on when you're dragging.
And a lot of times they don't come back to it for some stupid reason. I don't know why. Maybe they feel the tension. Maybe they just weren't all that active. They take half of it. They pull it. They've crushed it. You know, they've taken your rod down 12 inches. They let it up and then never hit it again.
They
and
just do one kind of crunching deal.
Yes,
and I know it's an injury bite because when if I do reel it in, like the eyeballs are bugged out because they just blasted that thing.
Okay. Let's go back to our fish tank days. If a big blue or a big flathead or a big channel cat is well fed, they'll still kill stuff. They love to kill stuff. If something gets close enough, they just go and smash that thing, spit it out, and they'll do it again. I had a flathead that was a murderer. You could put bullheads in there, big bullheads. He was only like 6 pounds. He'd be so full he could barely wiggle. I mean, his belly was so fat, and he would still kill every bullhead in the tank by morning. And I'm like, what are you doing? Matter of fact, he'd get so full, he'd puke and go back to eating. He'd digest the soft parts. And it wasn't just this one. This is a thing about flatheads. And flatheads they'll eat their fill. They can't even hardly breathe. They're so, you know, just their guts are so full. And then they'll puke and go back to eating. And biologically, that is advantageous as far as if you want to grow fast, you take the most nutritious, the softest, easiest parts and get rid of the skeleton, get rid of the meat, get rid of everything else. But it's pretty crazy. They'll do it with shad. They'll do it with bullheads. They'll do it with suckers. They'll do it bluegills, crappie, anything. Now, I don't know how much they do it in nature because that's something you can't prove. I mean, I've never witnessed them doing it in nature, but I got to think that that's kind of a proclivity of a flathead's nature. And blues possibly do it too.
I think so. And I you know, in the wintertime, you know, when you're saying going smaller and we go bigger, guys are like, well, what do you use? And I said, I like to use a certain size fish more than certain type of fish. I think that a certain size is
when I say small, that's what I mean. Small, about like
hand-sized chunk.
You know, it's something like that. That is a small bait for a blue, not for, you know, if it's a channel cat, I might go down to half, something about that big. But an average big bait, y'all know that it could be, I don't know if I got a loaf of bread in here. I do. Well, let's just do it like this. Here we go. We got some more hot dog buns. So a hot dog bun generally would be a small bait for my best time of year, August, September, October. But if it's a moon eye or something silvery, I don't mind that. If it's a sucker or a carp, a buffalo, a white bass or whatever, I like to see the bulk be something like this, only like more like 4 of them, like that. That's what I like to see.
Yeah.
It's not so dumb, but I mean, maybe this is the head section and I'm back a little bit from, like, say, the pectoral fin, maybe a couple inches or whatever. But we have caught some phenomenal fish, and at a huge rate, by using big baits like that, because, and I believe this, and I can't prove it, but I do believe that it keeps the 20s and 30s from spending my time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm a firm believer in is that a big blue, and you could throw up that other picture of that other one, or how about those 2 that you put on together at the intro? Do you have that?
We'll do the first one. This first
Okay.
one.
Okay. Now
Tell us
that
about
one
that
right
fish.
there, that I'll tell you about the size of that fish. It could eat a soccer ball pretty easily. That's how big the mouth was on that thing. It had an incredibly huge head, and this isn't the greatest picture for showing that, but I mean, so imagine if you were to just hold your hands out and barely touch your middle fingers and just make a big circle. That's how big around that fish was behind the dorsal fin. It was even bigger than that right there, where the hump is. But anyway, a fish like that has absolutely no problem with a 3-pound bait. It would have no problem with whatever. I happen to have caught that on a fairly small bait. It was just the head of a sucker. And it was literally, I marked the fish. I took, because it was such heavy current, I took a very streamlined bait because I didn't want to take the chance that it would get washed to the right or washed to the left and whatever. I needed something that would go straight down and pinpoint in front of that fish. But yet it still took probably 10 minutes for that fish to bite. And I was very close to that fish.
How much did the fish weigh?
My best estimation is 130 pounds. As far as length, it should have weighed like more than that. And you can't see it from this picture, but it wasn't the standard silhouette that you get from like a cookie cutter type giant blue, like out of a lake or whatever. It was more, a little bit more streamlined, and it was a little bit lighter in the very last third. Matter of fact, it had worn it probably 2 inches off its tail, and it still measured 62 inches.
Ooh. Wow, that's a good.
Yeah, you can tell by the lips that thing's just enormous. And
yeah,
normally like a male would have the head almost as big as the girth, but this thing's almost shaped like a female. But I don't believe I've ever seen a female fish that large. So,
it was war scarred a little bit more like a male would be, and its head size and lips and the width of the head and the width and just the size of the jawbones it inclines to make me guess that it's a male.
I would think that it would have to be if it was that damn big.
Yeah, and really at 62 inches, I think the regular silhouette would have put it around 145 to 150 pounds, somewhere around there. Now, the other picture that you showed earlier from quite a while ago, that fish was 140.
Okay, that's
Tim, how old do you think that fish would be?
Well, Jamie, let me interject. They've done studies on these fish, and they say the bigger the fish is, the faster they grow. The world record, which was like 146 pounds, was only 12 years old. But you can find a 20 pound fish that is 30 years old. So
Okay.
The size
Say that
doesn't
again, Chris.
Okay, the world
Chris.
record catfish they determined was 12 years old.
What was their aging method?
Okay, I don't know what they did. They take cross sections of some part of their body. The fish was killed.
There's two things that they can do. One, you do not need an electron microscope for. The other one you do. The electron microscope one is for the inner ear, called the otolith, Otolith. Very small inner ear bone. It's the only way to correctly calculate the age of a fish. The problem with the spine sections from the pectoral,
I believe it was done by the spine section.
Well, guess what? They all fuse. I proved that in my own deal with the DNR a long time ago. I'm like, I'm not going to support, because in college I was into fisheries biology too. I said, I'm not going to support that. I've already seen the slides, and I know they grow together, because you can't. Then let's just say this: if 100 and some pound fish was only 12 years old, everybody would be catching them. You couldn't get away from
I think though, Tim, that certain ones just have a faster growth rate.
Right.
Because, for instance, we have a fisher here in Texas, and it's got to be genetics. It just produces bigger fish at a huge clip over any of our other lakes. And there's just an astronomical amount of number of fish in that lake that are bigger. Now, what makes that lake any different? There is tons of bait in all our lakes. It gets the most fishing pressure, but somehow it has all these giant fish. And I say that has to do with the initial amount of genetics that were in there is what
I believe in genetics too, Chris. I do. And there's a place for that. But on the scale, if you were to say that an average 50-pound fish, based on that sort of scale, let's just say it grew 25% faster. The 100-pounder that was only 12 years old, they grew 25 times faster, or 25% actually. Then you could say that a fish of 50 should be only 5 or 6 years old. Well, we all know that blues at 5 or 6 years old. So that study, they obviously messed that up.
Yes,
and they love to mess it up because it makes their job easier. Then they go, well, we don't have to pay attention to these fish. We don't have to whatever.
I agree, because they've done a lot of studying here in Texas. Texas, I gotta say, with all the crazy laws and everything we have on fishing, that they have tried to study these blue cats more than probably most other states, and they put a ton of money into it to try to study it, and they have found that like our best fishery, the fish in there are damn near 40 years old at this point. They used to say that these catfish didn't live longer than 20 years. That's been blown out of the water.
Blown out of the water.
And I still hear guys saying, using that old information, saying, no, these old fish are only 20 years old. But then again, they'll have some of these other fisheries like up in Virginia where the fish just grow faster.
Sure.
And they get so much bigger, faster. I believe they're just a better.
It's very complicated
too. Stressful season like there is here in Texas. It's really stressful in the summer.
But let's also talk about this. Catfish gain weight in cooler water better than they do hot water.
Definitely.
Because the metabolism raises so fast that they can't hardly sustain their own weight. Blues can sustain their own weight, but they have to eat an absolute ton. Channel cats lose weight in the summer. They gain it all in the winter and all in the spring and all in the fall. And the summertime, they lose weight like nobody's business. So a 12-pound catfish, feeding it as much as it could possibly eat, a 12-pound catfish in winter, spring, and fall, by the time hot summer rolls around, if I don't control the temperature out there in that tank, he's down to 8 pounds, 9 pounds, skinny as a rail. And I feed it as much as it can eat, and it doesn't even have to work for it. So that'll tell you about the metabolism of a channel cat is pretty high. But a blue cat's metabolism is even a little bit higher. It's just that a blue can hold more in its stomach than a channel cat can, believe that or not. But look, that whole age thing, nobody can really figure it out. I know I have it figured out, but it's very complex. Okay. You have to take into consideration a lot of different factors, a lot of different growing season type things, cool versus hot water, blah, 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 blah. But on average, to answer your question, I believe that fish to be somewhere between 50 and 60 years old based on an average. Now, if it's a complete genetic freak, it might be 30, but there's no way that thing's 12 years old. And
I found that hard to believe too, but there's also been a lot of studies that say the bigger fish have a faster grow rate.
Of course they do, to sexual maturity. Up to sexual maturity they do.
And a lot of these fish that they judge their age or 20, 30 pounds are just old. And then they'll find one that's fairly young that's just giant.
Yeah, they will.
So I think that's why it's so important to turn the big ones loose, the really big ones especially, because if they're growing faster, there's only they say 1 in 10,000 or something gets to a certain size. There's something why he got that big. And they don't all get that big. It's not like if you had a tank full of 1,000 blue cats that you could go put them in this lake without any type of pressure and grow them all to be giants. They wouldn't do that. No. They wouldn't grow that big.
No.
Out of those 1,000, maybe none of them would.
You can literally what's called sully the gene pool right out of them. We've seen it on rivers that get dammed. They used to have giant flatheads. People started pressuring them. They dammed them up, and all of a sudden a big flathead's 30 pounds.
Yes.
Whereas before a big flathead was 60. I mean, shoot, I live within 50 miles of a river like that. And then you enact regulations to where people aren't hitting that, and it takes a while, but all of a sudden you'll get 50-pound flatheads back again, but it takes 30 years. See, that's the other thing. That's another reason why I know. Because if you have a river that is chuck full of 15-pound flatheads and it's dammed up, they don't really move out, they don't really move in, and all of a sudden you put regulations on that thing, it isn't 10 years and you get 50s. It's 25 or 30 years. Yeah. It's 20 years, and you'll get a few. It's not till that population gets a chance for the average. Some are going to grow faster, like you said, but then the average slow growers have to get time to catch up to where you're going to be catching 50s. Now, the one thing about fish that are past sexual maturity, a lot of them in a really prime habitat, you are going to have a situation where if there's too many, they won't grow very fast because they're having to share food, they're having to share habitat, they're having to do all that stuff. But as soon as you get a few flatheads that are big enough to eliminate a lot of small ones, then you start to see where some of them start to grow faster. And I've seen that in my tanks too, where you get young of the year that all came out of the same hatch.
Yeah.
You scrape them up, and you get one of them out of 3 that outgrows the other 2 and eats both of them. I mean,
you can catch them in your net. And I can just look at a fish that is this big.
Yep.
And I can tell you that's going to be a monster. I can look at 1,000 of them, and all of a sudden, one out of those 1,000, I'm like, damn, that's different. He's going to be giant, and you can just tell he's got. See,
I can't claim to know that one, but I can
a
claim
little
to
one
know
that's that big looks different than 99.9999%. Because I catch a ton of them in my net.
Yeah, and we don't catch many in the net.
Yeah, well, I throw deep, and I mean,
they're
in my deep holes.
so do I, but trust me, we do not have a gigantic population of blue cats up here. Our blue cats, the smaller ones, the small ones, there's some there, but most of them hang out farther downstream, and then they come up when they're a little bit older.
Yeah, that's what we call the nursery. There's parts of the lake where there is a freaking nursery,
and there's more backwaters. I don't fish stretches that have many backwaters because I want to eliminate small fish, and I
stay out of those areas unless but I used to go into it when I wanted to beat a skunk off, but now it's really hard for me to skunk.
What I wish is like Tim, where you have a lot of your rivers. You don't fish them year round. Here, a lot of times here in South Carolina, year round, people were constantly pressuring our fish.
But we have commercial fishing, which is devastating.
Yes.
Devastating.
And watching that fish that you caught, here, in the river here in South Carolina, because people are fishing just constantly, the bush hooking, the lead, everything.
Yeah. That destroys the big fish genetics more than you guys probably even know, because my lake growing up held the world record flathead. When I was a kid, Lake Louisville had the world record flathead. It's like 100 pounds. I mean, things have changed, but back then, 100-pound fish was just crazy. You know, and it came out of my lake, and it was not uncommon to see an 80 come out of there every week. Fast forward here to 2023, you won't see one over 40 coming out of the lake because it's just been hammered so hard. The genetics are gone, and I don't believe, no matter the amount of regulations or whatever you put on the lake, it would never return.
It will because of latent genes. That's the only way. Because every fish has a capability of getting big, but is that genetics turned on or off? Okay, you can have a long line of people that nobody is very tall, and then all of a sudden you get one kid that's 6 foot tall. And you go, okay, what happened here? You got latent recessive genes. If it's dominant, like you're saying, where it used to be dominant, all of a sudden from people taking big fish and letting little ones go, you will sully that gene pool down to where it is difficult. But give it enough years and it will come back, because those fish still do have the capability in their offspring, not them. They're done. It's in the offspring. One, like you said, 1 out of 10,000 that propagates, and all of a sudden you get bigger and bigger fish. That is basically a law of the megafauna. You know, that whole scientific principle, megafauna and all that stuff, you know, bigger area, blah, 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 genetics, if they're left alone. And you know,
I think, you know, they are left alone more here now. When I was a kid, flatheads were king. People didn't even fish for blue cats when I was a kid.
And you know, from one time, you know, I was a kid, you know, you could go to the river on a rod and reel, man, and catch nice big flatheads or big blues. But here, it seems like within the last 15 to 20 years, you know, even though we try to pinpoint where the monsters are, because of all the fishing year round, the set hooks and stuff, it's harder every year. Because you watch all this, you know, myself, I wish they would, you know, get rid of it. I mean, I really do.
I do too. But
it's heartbreaking. You know, you can go and catch, you know, some 30s and get lucky and catch a 70 or something. But when I leave the river and I go to the lake, the Santee Cooper, there's a chance, you know, because there's a lot less of that there, that you could catch an 80, 90, 100 pounder.
And believe it or not, before Santee Cooper used to be better, it had 300 guides on it at one time, and every one of them was nailing every fish to a board. And I told every one of them guides that I met, I said, you all are going to be sorry you're keeping them big fish one day. And it went from 300 guides down to almost nothing for a while. And it took a long time to rebound.
And you could tell a big difference in Santee Cooper now. I mean, you can actually go now and actually catch it. It's a lot better. But, you know, I wish we could do something to the rivers here locally to bring that back. I mean, because like I said, it's nothing on a Saturday night. I could see 10, 11 boats lining the side of the rivers up, and it's heartbreaking, really. And when
are they keeping them?
There's
still guys keeping them, Tim. It's really bad, man. You know, here's the thing. The majority of the new guys coming in are releasing the fish. They're looking up to these guys that are really good anglers, and the guys that are really good at catching catfish. They have a love for them, so they're going to let the big ones go because they're just more educated and they know what it takes to grow big fish. They don't just grow overnight, but there is still a percentage of guys that are stuck in that old school way that are going to keep everything, and I don't know why. A lot of them do it out of spite. They just have a joy of pissing people off. I think they would just keep it just so that they can go on social media and piss some people off. And, you know, it doesn't take very many guys. If you're a decent angler, I could go on my fishery by myself
and hurt it.
And destroy that thing by myself.
I know.
One-man show, I could really put a whooping on it.
You know, just last week there was an 80, I believe it was an 81 pounder that was actually kept flathead, and you know took it to a swimming pool, and they ended, you know, the fish ended up dying, and That's
Yep,
heartbreaking to see.
It is because a flathead, and truthfully, an 80-pound flathead is pretty rare. It's actually on even the Mississippi, it's like less than like 0.001% of the population. That if you were to do like a year-long net study, out of all the fish that you catch that are flatheads, it's going to be an infinitesimal small amount.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's your lake or your river or who, anybody at home. Flatheads just aren't. They're not. It's a rare fish to get to 100 pounds. They're going to be old.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they're going to be old. They may grow fairly quickly up to 50, up to sexual maturity, but they're still going to slow down because that's one thing I was going to tell you, Chris. I was involved in the growth study, which was a 6-year program where they tagged and recaught fish and see how fast they grow. Fish that were young, like 5-6 pounds, grew relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Up to about 36 inches, which on the Rock River, that's about sexual maturity, 36 inches, which on some of them it's only 24. But after 36, they would barely put an inch on a year. And then by the time they were 40 or 50 pounds, they would put on girth more than they would put on length. But the length was down to about a 1/4 inch a year. So to get something, so on the Rock, it's a river, about a 50-inch fish, 48, 49, 50-inch fish is around 50 pounds. To get to 60 or 70, it is going to take another 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
let's
really heavy feeding.
Let's quit complaining about this and talk about how to catch fish, because I think that's way more fun. Because we all know that people catch fish. We all know that it's rough. We all know that I went to a live show and I had
guys
25
like us
hoop
together.
I know.
Somehow it always leads to.
It does.
I would just wish people
how we want it to be, not how it is.
Respected the fish more.
Yep.
So, but let's definitely move on. I'm gonna go down your list, your fish here, and we'll talk about your fish catches.
Okay.
Tell us about this story right here.
We just talked about an 80-pound flathead, and that is an 80 right there. Actually, he's a little bit bigger than that. So that fish, and for anybody in the chat that has listened to me before, which I'm sure a lot of them have because I talk a lot, that was on one of my sunken barge spots. And a sunken barge is kind of a special thing. First, there's not that many of them. And if you do find one that is in the current and does have space underneath, there's overhead cover. They love overhead cover, especially if it's in fairly deep water, like 15, 20 foot. And they also like a direct drop. So this thing was about perfect. And that fish came, it was actually a pretty tough bite. And I had a couple friends with me from the Chicago area, and they were planning on going home that night, but I kind of dashed their hopes because I get like Captain Ahab when the bite's tough. And so that fish bit at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm telling you what, that thing was an absolute beast. Now, if you look close, you can see a bite mark. Take a look at that like dark purplish area by its dorsal fin.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the top lip of another flathead that bit it. And the bottom bite mark is halfway underneath the belly.
Wow.
So, Tim, here's something crazy I've noticed when I've caught some of my biggest flatheads ever. Now, I've never caught one as big as you, but my biggest was 68 pounds. And damn near every big one I've caught has had a bite mark that's even bigger than it.
Yep. You'd be surprised that I've literally caught 30-pound flatheads that have been in the throat of other ones up to the dorsal fin. So you got a 30-pound flathead head, which is about that wide. And you can literally see the teeth pads on top and bottom, and even the oval pads in the back of the throat. The gripper pads, the two on top that kind of pull fish in, and they're wore down into it. So that flathead that I caught that was 30 pounds had been in the mouth of another flathead recently and for a long time. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff, but that one right there and when you watch flatheads interact in a tight space, they literally do target the side. See where the gut is right there?
Yeah.
One flathead will suck onto the side because he can now control that fish. And he will actually, I've had tanks that were like in my house that were like 6 feet long and they'll actually grab that thing with so much suction and literally swim it sideways and bash it off the other side of the tank. And they will just keep repeating that. My wife got so mad because when they fight like that, there's so much water on the floor. It's ridiculous. And it's really loud.
Wow.
But if that was a female, they almost see that one's got a bite mark too. See it?
Yeah, that was got a vicious bite mark.
Yes.
Actually, it's got two.
It does.
Well, unless something giant came up from underneath it to bite.
No, that it was a double bite, but a lot of these flatheads I catch during pre-spawn because they're the big fish. They're way more predictable as far as location, and I can spend less time at it, honestly, because by the time you get into August, you're fishing for one fish, and that's fine, but you never know if you're going to be at the right spot at the right time because August is a whole different deal. Pre-spawn, you have a lot more spots and they're a lot more agreeable. So, but anyway, yeah, that was somewhere around a 60-pound fish.
So when you're fishing pre-spawn and they got a giant bite mark, is that because one of them is marking is staking out his territory and that's a prime
protecting
spot
it, protecting
breeding,
it.
and then another one comes in that's even bigger.
Yeah.
It's like,
yep,
get out of here.
Yep, that's right. Spot. That's right. That's exactly what they do because flatheads, they can't tell how big they are. Okay, a little flathead thinks he's tough to a bigger flathead because they can't afford to be scared. They're never scared. Like when they're fry, they'll like hide and stuff like that and rocks and whatever. But once they get 3, 4, 5 pounds, a little one will come and attack one twice its size until it gets beat up enough and then it relents. But flatheads, and I like to think about it like this. I like to think about them being masters of their own real estate. Unlike blues don't really care about real estate. Flatheads care about real estate, their prime location, because that's what attracts females. Because females can't, they don't go in there and go, look at that awesome looking giant flathead. Look at him, he's sexy. They don't do that. They got to, hey, this is a sexy house. It's got the right current. It's got the right depth. It's got the right cover. It's got everything. And so happens, here's this big, robust male that's going to pass his genes on to have them be successful in the future. So it's really a cool thing. I mean, females almost never have a bite mark.
I've heard that after the male builds his nest, now this, I don't know if this is blue cat or flathead, but he goes out and seeks and brings the female back to the nest. That's not the case.
Never heard that.
So I read at the fish, the guys that breed them at the fishery where where you can buy them for your pond. That the male leaves the nest, goes and grabs a female, does his thing, protects the eggs, hatches her, and then goes out and he'll get another one, bring her back to his same nest. And this might happen 2 or 3 times throughout the season.
This is possible.
That's why the male, at the end of the season, he's so battered and bruised and skinny. He hadn't eaten anything, and he's been fighting for that little piece of real estate.
It could be that they need to do that with lack of current. But I don't know of any scenario that would make much sense.
So the female comes to him
in a natural river, yes. And we know this because the males show up first in tributaries. There's one that I think it's got a low head dam that can't go any farther. Come off a main river, it's only 7. You can't find a flathead before like May 10th or so. But the males all come in first, and then the females come in about July 4th. And then you might as well not even try to catch another one. It's over. They're there because you can, the hoop net guys catch them and all that stuff. But, so the females always, and same thing with channel cats, the big males show up first, then the females do. The males have already sorted themselves out. They got the biggest dumb head channel cat, big blue lipped. He's got the best spots. The big females come in, and then after that spawning's done, after about a week and a half, the only thing you can find in that entire tributary is 4-pound females because they're left out. The males have already skedaddled, and they're trying their best to do their faux spawn.
So Jeremy says he believes blues recognize there's a bigger fish than they are, and hence the dink bite shuts off suddenly when a big one moves in.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, we catch a lot of dinks around giant fish, and
Yep,
uh,
you can.
I think sometimes the bigger fish kind of sit on the outskirts and use the smaller fish to let them do all the work. Smaller fish are much more aggressive than big fish. They move
They are.
more.
They are.
They go after bait a lot more
Yeah.
actively. And the big,
Yep.
I believe the big fish sometimes just kind of hang around and wait for a decent sized injured fish to eat it. I have noticed big fish sometimes run in pairs, sometimes run in threes.
Yep.
When we catch if we catch a 50, there's a good chance we catch another one that's similar in size.
Yes.
Right? Like, consecutively. So
let me tell you a story. Although this is an exaggerated story, it's true, but it just happens so rare. But I did a single anchor one time where the smallest fish was 40. We caught him first on the perimeter. And then all of a sudden we caught like 9 other fish, the smallest being 70 and the biggest being well over 100. And so it was 70 to 100. And there was like 9 fish within like an hour. And there was no other small fish. We weren't using big baits back then. We were using 6-inch pieces of freaking Asian carp. And that's still my number one top 10 anchor of all time.
what makes them all decide they just on this day they're gonna run together? Because that's generally not the case.
It's generally not the case. You're right, but the tendency for there to be 1 to 3 giants at one time. Now I can mark a giant all by himself. I've caught giants all by themselves, but usually not.
Yeah.
Usually there's another fish of that same kind of caliber with him. Sometimes there's other fish, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
It's almost like they're brothers or brother and sister, or I don't understand. I don't know why it's like that. Why do you think that a really big fish
I can't
runs
hear you.
in
For
pairs?
some reason you're breaking up.
Why do you
There we
think
go.
that a really big fish will often run in? I think you're breaking up. Why do you think a big fish will often run in pairs like that? Can you hear me?
Tim, can you hear me, Bob?
Tim, you've gone silent, buddy. You're going to have to reboot. Let me text him.
Tim, can you hear me, Bob? Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Let me get Tim to reboot.
I'm going to go out and come back in.
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you now. Go ahead and reboot, Tim.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh.
There he is. All right. Can you hear us now, Tim?
All right. Are we back?
We got you. So when
Everybody
you're fishing,
just froze up.
yeah. So when you're fishing, generally I'll tell guys, okay, we got this big one. Now we got a chance to catch the bookend here in the next 10, 15 minutes. Why do you think that those big fish like that like to run in pairs? Can you hear me?
You're up. Yeah, I can't hear anything you were saying.
Can you hear me now?
Go out.
Yeah.
And then come back in.
Yeah.
Chris, while Tim's out, it's amazing that, I can sit here all night and just learn so much from just listening to, everything he's talking about. It's just,
I love talking to Tim. He's one of my favorite anglers. We grew up in the same era type deal. So back in the day when you had to just learn by going out and doing it, he's also he's a hell of a lot better angler than I am. So I look up to him as an angler. He's always gives me good advice.
I
get him back in here.
I've learned so much, already tonight that I feel that, I can't wait to get back to the river Saturday night, just to try things out.
So why do you think these big fish often run in pairs, Tim?
I'm going to go all the way out. I'm going to go all the way out and come back in.
But I was wanting that, it's amazing, say Saturday night, some of the smaller flatheads we've caught, at the size bait that they will go for. You're putting, a 2-hand size brim on there, you got these smaller flatheads, it's amazing at the size bait that they will definitely go after. And it's amazing to me.
I tell a lot of guys, my take on it is catfish are a lot like pigs.
Yeah.
And if you've been pig hunting, you'll see smaller pigs running in large packs, and they all just kind of they feed. They all stay in unison, and they're heading in a certain direction, but they're not all facing the exact same direction. They're all, and they don't like to all pack together. They like to each keep their little distance while they're feeding and eating. And the bigger they get, the fewer of them there are. And as you get to really big giant pigs, the most biggest ones are with 1 or 2.
That's it.
And you don't see them really running together. Can you hear us now, Tim? Can you hear me, Tim? We got problems, buddy. Can you hear us?
All right.
There we go.
I can hear you now, I think.
Okay, good.
There we go.
We got you. So I was telling
I
Jamie.
still have the world's worst connection out in the country here.
I was telling Jamie, he's froze. I was telling Jamie that, to me, when guys ask me, like when they're looking at sonar, side image, how do I determine what's the difference between a big school of carp or catfish? I tell them that catfish often look like, if you know what pigs look like when they run together, they often move similar to a pack of pigs. They all move in a general direction. They're not all just lined up. They're heading in a certain way, but they're all oriented slightly different. And the larger the fish gets, the fewer of them that you see in that pack. So if you see 20s, you might see 6 of them. If you see 50s or 40s, you might see 4 of them. If you see 50s, you might only see 2. And as you get up to really giant fish, they generally like to go off by themselves, and they don't even run anywhere near the pack. Is that kind of something that's similar that you've seen with these bigger?
I heard about every third word of that. Because my wife got home and she's probably streaming one of her shows that she's probably seen about 8,000 times. So, there she goes. Sorry, I'll stop, she says. Okay. Now I can hear you. So kind of restate your question again.
I think now
I'm back.
There we go.
All right. Maybe it was on my end.
No, it was my wife streaming. If we have a television show streaming somewhere, mine's the first one to go. Terrible.
So I'll quickly run back through that. When we were talking about fish and how they run together, oftentimes you'll see the bigger ones in pairs and whatnot. The smaller the fish, the larger the group. I tell guys when they're like, how do I determine what I'm looking at on sonar? I can't tell whether it's a carp or a blue cat or what. And I'd say, well, blue cats will run often in the same direction, feeding in the same general direction, but oriented slightly different. The smaller there are, the larger the group. And as they get bigger, a 20, you might see 6 20s together. As they get up to 40s, you might see 4 of them together. When they get over 50, it's generally not more than 3 of them together.
Yep.
And once they get up over 60, 70, it's usually maybe 1 by themselves,
Yep.
and they're not even anywhere near the other ones. They just
Right.
go do their own thing.
Now, this is where we're going to talk about the difference between a lake and a river. And I'm very familiar with what you're saying. And I agree with you on a lake. For one thing, a lot of times you'll have fish moving up off the bottom a lot more in a lake, in a no current situation. Mine, I mark things that are very close to the bottom, and it's pretty rare to mark blues that are actively feeding in slower water. Let's just say I'm kind of looking at a basin hole, and the head of the basin hole has got decent current because it shallows up right there, and maybe it's a wing dike, and maybe the current's kind of getting misdirected around it, and I'm marking some fish hovering off the bottom. They could be huge, but they're not willing to eat. They're just sitting there like this. Now, if I see some that are nose down, tail up, and everybody hears me say that on the river, that means they're feeding. They can be up off the bottom, but I'll start marking those fish 1, 2, 3 like that, big, or I'll mark them flat on the bottom. Say this is your bottom. You just mark them flat on the bottom like that. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes they're right next to each other, and I got to turn my sensitivity way down so that I only mark just fish over 4 foot. That's another thing. Do you guys look at your fish with a decent, like I say, a 20% sensitivity, and you're marking bait fish as well, and then turn your sensitivity way down to see if you've actually got big fish there or just smaller fish that are next to each other? Because I know that when my sensitivity's up, I'll have smaller fish, 20s, 30s, next to each other that will show up like 50s, 60s, and 70s. But if I turn my sensitivity way down, then I start to see the difference between 1 fish and 2 fish or 3.
I think that for me personally, when I'm in a lake, I can pretty much tell what the fish size is going to be within 5 pounds from my side image.
From your side image.
Yeah, from my side image, just the length of the fish, how fast I'm moving in the boat. If I can dial my graph, the speed of the graph into the speed of the algorithm determines if it's going to be stretched.
I'm not that good. Side image, I'm horrible with it.
Okay,
you know what side image looks like to me? Looks like carp. Looks like carp because
I got tricked on that for years, man. But I've fished it long enough, and if you watch my lives, you'll hear me say there's a 40 on the side of the boat. If we're going to catch it, it's going to be on that second to outside rod, and then bang, it goes down, and it's a 40.
But what we have 50 to 90 pound Asian carp in the same waters.
Yeah, so we got big carp and big buffalo.
Yeah.
And I can tell what they are by the way they orient and how bright they are on a return.
Okay.
On a side image return, a carp is going to have a much brighter return.
Okay.
It's almost shines. Whereas a blue cat's a softer return, and as it gets down to that meaty tail, it gets really soft.
Okay, I'll try to look at that this season.
Kind of soft and fuzzy, and guys are like, "Are you sure what you're talking about?" And then bang, it's fish on, and so they're like, "I mean, I can't. I'm not going to doubt you anymore, Chris." So
and I'll tell you, guys that fish lakes are probably better with their sonar than guys that fish rivers. And
I hear that a lot, Tim. And I think a lot of guys that fish the river often are looking for structure, and then maybe finding the fish on structure, and then fishing at a place where they think the fish is going to ambush. Whereas us lake guys, we're looking for the fish.
Yeah, and I am too. But sometimes I have no choice. Sometimes, and you'll hear me in my live say, Sean, we don't have, the fish aren't moving right. We can't get them to go. We're putting it in front of their face. They're not going. We're going to have to go and ambush them where they're going to eventually come once they get up. Because if we're fishing on them, who says they're going to find our baits? They could go right past our baits when they get up. And all of a sudden, but I need something. I need the bottom to come up. I need something to kind of make them kind of hang around a little bit, especially since big ones don't just gobble anything. They take their time a little bit.
And Tim, getting back to what you just said on the river, myself and you, I look for that runway. I look for that what I call funnel effect.
With blues, you want to,
That's it. And I know that they're going to come through there in that that low part, that ditch. I know that's going to be where I can ambush them, to get up on them. And,
you know what else? When you say funnel, I once wrote an article about current funnel, because a catfish, if he gets in the neck of it, he can literally smell, because they can only smell so far left and right. But if he's got two currents coming to meet one, he can tell from his barbel if he's really active. He can go to the right, he can go to the left, he can go up the middle. So they'll sit in those current funnels like that. Channel cats will do it. Flatheads don't hardly use their barbels at all. They might as well not. I suspect in another 100,000 years, a flathead won't have hardly a barbel at all. I mean, they're whittled down to nothing. But a blue is going to use that, and they sit in where they got multiple currents coming into one section, so they know whether to go right, they know whether to go left or up. I think it's a behavioral advantage for them.
And see, I know some areas here on our river where we basically have, you've got a creek here, you got the main channel here, then you might have another little creek coming. And I know when I sit in that area, I position those rods because I know, okay, there's one main channel that all of it it's going to come to. So I try to, position myself a lot of times, depending on the time of year, that I know they're going to come through there either certain time of day. It's almost like basically timing them down to that point and get in front of them and sit on that, because, hey, that feeding time's coming. They're going to come through there. And like you said, it's a perfect ambush style area.
Epic, Donovan's Fishing says, do you use, I already know your answer because I've watched you fishing enough, but in fast current, do you use floats?
No, not at all. I don't use demon dragons. I don't use anything. I am pure old school, giant bait, giant weights, and 100-pound leaders, and biggest hook I can get, and the most ridiculous rods that aren't too ridiculous.
So,
but to go, I just saw Parker Pursuit's thing that you put up there. He said it's going to be an adjustment, learning how to use sonar in the boat.
It's like learning Swahili.
He's lucky. He's lucky because Sean and I, we don't live in his area. He lives a little bit farther south than our area that we fish. But we plan on taking Jerry flathead fishing in June down to a place called Keokuk. And I will school Jerry of what I know on how to use your sonar on a river in a boat. So yeah, he's going to get a little bit of a class, I guess.
It's something we just started doing that a lot of people looks at, myself and Rebecca, when we do this. We started dragging. Certain times, like right now, our current is slow in the rivers. We won't do it when the current's moving through, this area, the Great PD. There's only a certain time we'll do it. But right now, and people look at us like we're crazy. They haven't seen this before. It's sort of what they call us, kind of new school style fishing, where we're drifting these rivers up and over these ledges. And, a lot of times we try to hit on just the outside edges of these, what we call log jams. And, it has really paid off for us here, within the last 2 to 3 years at doing that when the current's actually slow right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to get your input. How do you feel, on that?
Well, sometimes when the current's slow, it's just a matter of getting a fish, especially in a less turbid water situation, to actually get up and move. And that's one thing blue cats will do. They will get up and move and chase a bait, especially if they're in a situation where the current isn't bringing baits to them. They're not able to ambush, so they're like, okay, now I got to work for it. So they're moving and they're looking and they're corralling and they're running ledges, and they're holding tight to ledges and moving up and down them, because it increases their chance they're going to run into a bait fish. Now, my river is so colossally strong with current that they don't really have to do that. It's rare that we get fish suspending and moving around. When we do, we know what we have to do to combat it. But most of the time, they're going to position more to where I can put a big bait in front of their face for the 5 to 15 minutes it takes for them to finally decide to eat it.
That's it.
You know, and a lot of guys that bump on where I fish, they don't do very good on big fish. They catch a lot of 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yeah.
But as far as 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s,
I see that a lot with bumping. I mean, I know guys catch good fish bumping. Well, when I see the guys that are fishing their same waters, catching the really giant fish, none of them are bumping.
Dude, I'm the last anchor. I'm the last anchor in all of the area that I fish almost.
Why is that? Is the bigger fish just more
it's
like
tough.
Strategic when he takes the bait? Is he just
but I'm the last anchor because it sucks to pull an anchor in
hell yeah. I gave that shit up 20 years ago, man.
Well, everybody else is flying around like they got like a chicken with their head cut off. I see them all the time. Sean and I we'll lock through and we'll be looking, and you see these guys bumping and dragging and doing all this stuff, and they're not doing any good. And I'm thinking, oh man, the bite's terrible. Because we talk to them. We talk to them in the lock. We talk to them at the thing. They're like, hey, how you doing? Oh, we haven't caught a couple 20s or whatever. And I'm expecting the bite to be terrible. I figure out my best 10 spots set up, and in 20 minutes, we've already landed a 70. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? And then, you know, maybe I catch, maybe we catch 350s, 60, a 70, and maybe even a 90. And when you're going out, everybody's like, man, it was terrible today. And I don't have the heart to tell them.
Yeah.
And you know,
well, I know there are some guys that catch just crazy sized fish dragging. We got a new guy on our pro staff, Steve Burian. He catches tons of 80s, 90s, 100s.
What's
dragging.
His name?
Steve Burian. He fishes.
Yeah, I actually follow him. So
the dude's a fishing machine. I mean, he's got to be one of the best anglers in the country, and he drags a lot. He anchors too, but he drags a lot. And he's catching giants, anchoring. I know he uses huge baits.
Yes.
A lot of it is fishery, but
the Mississippi is not drag friendly either.
Right.
It's not. It is not drag friendly at all. If you were to come to the Mississippi and go, I'd go, Chris, do you want to drag? You'd be like, no.
And you know,
well, I told you I'm gonna come fish with you. We're gonna just do whatever you say. So
yep.
You come fish with me, you're gonna have to do what I say. So
and
the water's different everywhere you fish. I mean,
it is.
And you know, like myself, you know, we were just talking about dragging the rivers at certain points. I love anchor fishing. Okay, I mean that's my number one. I love anchor, but you know, I can tell a difference from when I anchor to when I drag at the size of my fish. Now, take the river out of it and go to the lake, I do a lot better on bigger fish when I'm drifting. I mean, we catch some nice size.
So let me say this, Jamie. There's a difference between drifting and dragging.
Yeah, there is.
Dragging, it's much more technical, and there is more of a game plan to what you're doing.
Why they call it controlled dragging.
Yes, there is a reason why you're doing what you're doing. Now, you can go do it just like drifting, but the better you get at it, there becomes a certain way that you do it where you increase your big fish. Now, there are sweet spots in fisheries where those big fish are hanging out. And why I think dragging works so good is because you present the bait in a natural presentation. A injured bait fish who's slowly bumping and dragging by and I fish ambush. I fish a lot of ambush structure.
I do too.
And I think that's why, I break a lot of records on every fishery me and my boy fish. We've pretty much got a record on every fishery. Guys are like, man, the fishing's great down there. I'm like, well, we do have a lot of records, so it's not like everybody's doing what we're doing.
Right.
We do have a method to our madness that we do have a certain way that we do things that gives us a little higher chance of catching giant fish. But that's why I think dragging works on lakes is you can present that bait kind of like
and you know what?
Swimming by that's injured, where you can't do that sitting on anchor. It's like a dead bait sitting there.
If I fished lakes mainly, I wouldn't anchor. I'd drag too.
So when you're anchoring in a river, there's current, which can provide that action on a bait that's sitting there on anchor. You can't do that when in a lake. It's just
no, and
different.
You know, I've been in the boat with tournament guys that are very, very good controlled dragging. It was wintertime, and I still believed in locating a few fish and anchoring up on them. We didn't do that much. The bite wasn't that great, and we didn't catch very many big fish. We were actually, I think, on Wilson. I put a video out on it, but still, I mean, I would probably opt for controlled dragging over drifting, and I would probably, if I fished mainly lakes, that's what I would do. I would have, a really nice, I'd have a nicer fish finder than I've got. I would have a, one of them really nice trolling motors. I don't even have a trolling motor on my boat. I don't even want one.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to get in my way. Because it's useless. It is useless on the Mississippi for what I do. If I was a tournament guy, I have to put fish in the boat. So I'm going to want to find areas on the Mississippi that I could drag. And there are some. But I don't fish them because they're dink land to me.
Yeah.
There's a whole section that people drag all the time. It's sand dunes. It's probably, I don't know, a couple miles long. It's 20, 25 foot deep. They drag, bump, drift, drag, blah, 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 and they occasionally catch a big fish. I only fish 6 weekends a year. If you really think about not every time. We don't go live every time, but we do. I mean, this last season we did. And if you look at the lives, I mean, there wasn't that many in the big fish area. And I mean, shoot, we caught an absolute ton of fish over 70 pounds.
I think it's crazy that you can go out and hit those 70s like that, just like, and you're targeting them.
And I didn't used to be able to do it because I still had channel cat and flathead mentality. I didn't understand that there is no such thing as too fast of current for giant blues. I surmised that they were going to be just off the current. So that's what I used to do. And I'd be lucky I'd catch 50s with pretty regularity, but I would catch almost no 70s. And I not until I learned that I'm going to need to get the biggest, dumbest weight you've ever wanted to throw and the biggest, dumbest swivel you ever wanted to throw with the biggest, dumbest hook you ever wanted to throw, and then just hook that thing down into that deep water on that thing. You got to mark these fish, do all that stuff, and deal with that biggest, dumbest, stupid anchor in the world. Yeah. Sometimes I got 200 feet of rope out just to hold a 40-pound anchor down, or a hurricane.
I think, I learned that pretty young. When I was a kid, we'd fish these floodgates, and they would just be wide open. And so we would catch a 20 or 30, and we'd play with it just outside the current. And then when he decided he was ready to leave, he'd get in the current, he'd be gone. But then occasionally we would catch one over 60, 70 pounds, and it could just swim out into the nastiest, craziest current you ever thought. That a 30-pounder just gets swept away instantly, like he's nothing. But a giant can go out there and sit in it and just lay down in it. And I'm like, what?
Or strip off 150 yards of line and then and then pass the boat. After that, and then pass the boat upriver.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing to me, but there's just a different class of fish when they get up to that size. They just act completely different than
the hydrodynamics of them is exaggerated because, actually fish don't, especially blues, I would not classify if I had a biology professor ask me, do blues swim or do they fly? I would have to say they fly more than they swim because the shape of them, just the basic hydrodynamics creates a push. They don't really, and if you think about it, a channel cat swims in an S, flathead swims head this way, tail one way, head this way, tail one way. Well, a blue is a rudder. That's all he does is this.
Yeah.
When he's swimming, he doesn't. They don't have to put out that much energy to, swim 14 mile an hour current. They're actually not as fast going downstream. They're pretty darn fast going upstream. So that tells me that their shape has some push to it. Just some like an airfoil. You get the airfoil where you get the front, and then you got this. They're shaped like an airfoil almost. And then their pectoral fins they're the actuators that take them up and down and a little bit to the side, and so does their tail. Their tail's propulsion. But they don't really have to use that much because I think they're so hydrodynamic. Like a dolphin. I mean, dolphins, shoot, they swim faster than a boat.
Yeah, but when you catch a blue in shallow water, they act a lot like a dolphin. They will get airborne.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They will run to the left, run to the right.
Yeah.
They'll go around the boat 3 times.
Yes. Yeah. And you think you got a striper if you didn't know better.
Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. So, flatheads pull just kind of like a movie chair. They're just like,
it's that
I'm out of here.
Cool.
And they'll use the current against you. A flathead in the lake is disappointing to me. I've caught some huge flatheads in the lake. I mean, that one I just talked about a lake. If that thing would have been, if that 100-pound freaking 5-foot-long flathead was in a river like I just was in, my God, it'd have been an hour and a half.
Well, Tim, I've got to ask you, certain times a year in a river, and we do it ourselves, how much do you play around with your setups? Adjusting, to where you're going to fish, adjusting your setup, your leaders and everything. How much do you play around with
Almost none.
I can tell you from watching Tim puts the bait in front of the fish. He finds the fish. It's not a whole lot of guesswork with Tim. He puts it in front of the fish.
Yep. Now, and then if they won't bite, then I'll start hopping it because I want them to get interested in it. Because if it's sat there a while, I want the scent to go. I want to hop. I'll only hop it 6
you try to upset the fish a little bit. Sometimes when I'm seeing you're like, well, I'm gonna put it 5 feet from him.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna put it 3 feet from him.
Yep.
This may be over 30, 40-minute time, and then he's like, now I'm gonna put it in front of his nose.
Yes.
Tim's good enough to know now I got the bait a foot in front of this fish's nose. Where 99.9% of fishermen will never be on that level to be able to put a bait in front of a fish's nose like that. So a lot of guys don't really understand what we're talking about, but that's why Tim's on a different level.
I'm on a different level because I'm a success-oriented psychopath. That's why.
He's a catfishing savage.
Savage.
Somebody wanted me to ask you that, and I sort of figured from watching you in the past, you really didn't play around with a lot of that. And I just find that amazing how you're able to position your baits and stuff and work it the way you do.
So I didn't put it on film, which I should have. One of my great friends that lives in Ohio came out and fished with us 2 seasons ago, and he's got his rods, which are awesome. He's kind of a gear guy, and he's got I don't even know what they are. They're just like the newest state of the art. Probably cost $200 for the reel, and he's got the best Power Pro stuff on and all this stuff. And he's got all these whirly gigs and trinkets and all this stuff, and we're up in the 60, the 80-pound spot, the 100-pound spot. We're in a swirling mass of this hole that comes out of this and moves down to there. You know what I did? I unhooked this thing. I took the pair of scissors and I went, no more Christmas trinkets on this, and it just dropped to the deck. And you have seen his mouth. I should have filmed it. It'd have been the greatest thing in the world. But
I think when you're fishing in that heavy current, you pretty much got to simplify everything to the very bare minimum. Am I right?
Well, yeah. And Aaron, he ended up catching the biggest fish of his life that night. Last bait, last throw, 3:30 in the morning, and we were literally having to throw upstream for it to get caught because it was too swirly. You had to be kind of off to the side, and we had to throw upstream to the head of the hole and let it bounce down to where, because if you threw it this way, the current was too strong, it wouldn't peg at the bottom of the ledge. It would just fly up. And so with the weights we had, and I didn't have as many donkey weights back in those days as I do now, but so he was throwing an 8-ounce flat sinker up and letting it go around, and that rod accounted for probably 15 fish that night between 40 and 80 pounds. Just that one rod, because we couldn't keep anything else in place, but we couldn't move because it would turn us around. And even if we had a trolling motor like Spot Lock, it'd have been useless. We couldn't have drug it. It was too fast. We couldn't have there just was no other way to do it. So there's a 50-foot deep ledge like this, and to the right side, it shoots up into 27. And we had to anchor and be actually sideways to the current like this because the current's coming straight. And we literally had to launch stuff and let it dribble and get caught and leave out enough slack, because if you tried to tighten it up, it'd just bump up the lip. So that's one of the reasons why I started carrying. I don't know if I got them now. No, looks like I put everything away, but the big giant donkey weights.
So for some of you guys that aren't familiar with Tim, he really doesn't even target fish under 40 pounds.
I try not to.
I mean, obviously you'll catch a few like that,
Sure.
but if you watch Tim fish, generally most of the fish he catches are going to be over 40 pounds. And obviously when you go big like that, you're going to catch fewer fish, but the guy's got a high success rate for giant fish. And even when he's going big, he tends to generally catch one over 50. Every time I'm watching him, he's got one over 50 on. I mean,
we had one live show where on one anchor we caught 2 70s and an 85.
Yeah, I was watching that one.
Yeah. And you know what? That was one of those situations where we had marked them earlier, thrown baits on them, right, and they just wouldn't do it. So we had to move up and wait until they got active enough. And then, and we even caught one on a down rod, which is basically a suspended rig, because they were coming up off the bottom and moving to this. And so I said, okay, we got to get a down rig down. We had to put it about 2.5 foot off the bottom, and bam, he hit, and it was a big donkey bait. I mean, big, like a softball.
Now, on our river, I mean, for the ones that don't know, I was going to see, we've got an area that's basically a 70-pound, 70-foot hole, and it's a real sharp turn, okay? And then you've got a creek off of it, okay? This current on this turn is coming this way, going that way, then coming back this way. Then pretty much you've got the main drag that's coming through. What would you suggest how to fish that style of area?
I might even throw sideways on it, and I'm a little bit familiar with the PD. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's not a really wide river.
No.
But it's pretty deep. It's a low land, a lot of grass, a lot of whatever, and it goes like straight down. So a lot of times in a situation like that, I'll drive my boat straight into the bank, because if you're going to anchor or you're going to try to use your spot lock, it's going to turn you at some point, and you're just going to be a mess. So I'll ledger my boat to the bank and start throwing out sideways, letting my bait go to where it catches on that ledge. And that's actually one of the most precise ways to pinpoint big fish, believe that or not. And that's one of my most successful things, where I'll mark a fish. I know I can't get it in front of him because I'm going to be in line with him. So I'll move my boat over, throw out to the side, let it bounce along the bottom till it slaps the bottom of that ledge. And now I'm right in line with it. There's other things where you won't see them on your fish finder. But the river is really interesting when you look at it. Sometimes there'll be ridges that run with the current. Sometimes they'll run a little bit across the current. So I'll use those baits and the drag on the line to just catch it on that lip to where it'll be right in line with that fish. And, I kind of know when I've missed it, and I kind of know when I'm on it. Even if I missed it, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to give it some time. But I'm only going to give it 10, 15 minutes. 20 minutes, and then I'll be like, nope, I got to redo this. And I'm the same way with anchors too. I'll know if I'm spot on with my anchor, how I intended it to be. I'll be like, okay, we're going to stay. But if I'm not, we'll pull that stupid anchor up 80 feet and do it all over again. You know, and literally it's like pulling 40 pounds up the side of a freaking apartment building, if you think about it, you know, and it is.
And see, a lot of these places on this PD River, a lot of the people won't fish it because they're scared of how the currents are doing so wild that honestly, we love hitting those style areas because they're not fished very often.
Okay, so do you catch giant fish in those?
We actually do catch pretty good between 50 to 70-pound fish.
That's giant. I mean,
for that
anything
river,
over 50 qualifies as a giant in my book.
Yeah, and for that area, because we've never seen nobody fish this areas because they really can't. They say, man, we can't get set up. We don't know. You know, we got boat going this way, lines going this way. A lot of people doesn't know how to fish certain style areas like that.
And you know what? I fish a lot of those areas that a lot of people won't fish because they seem to yeah, right. I used to, don't anymore. I'm kind of old, but let's just say a lot of the spots.
Hey, look at those guns.
I call them epic.
Those are
spots.
epic.
Yeah, I call them epic spots, and they are scary spots.
Yeah,
and they look so scary. Until I started doing YouTube, I'd never seen anybody in probably 90% of the spots that I fish. Nobody ever fished them. Now that I'm doing YouTube and TikTok and stuff, I see people trying it. Now, luckily, they're not always good. Like, they're not perennial awesome spots. They don't hold a 70 every time. You got to be there at the right time. You got to know what to look for. You got to, because they're highly mobile. Thank God for that. But I just don't see a lot of people fishing like the crazy wing dikes with the big turnaround current and all the crazy stuff and the 20-mile-an-hour current over the top, and it's 14 foot, and people lose anchors on that stuff.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they lose fish, they lose anchors, and the Mississippi, if you fall out of the boat, it's pretty good. Pretty good chance you're going to die. I mean, life jacket or no. I mean, I've probably seen, I wouldn't say more body bags than anybody, but I've seen a lot of body bags in my day because people anchor sideways below a dam. They run into something at night. They got too much ass in too tiny of a boat, if you get what I mean. They're out there. They go 3 times a year. They're in a 16-foot John boat that's only that deep to begin with. Both of them, they weigh 300 pounds apiece, and they got 200 pounds of beer in there. And pretty soon, and you go, hey, dude, don't anchor sideways, because if your front anchor goes, your back anchor, you're nothing but going down. And I think over the years, I've probably rescued 10 people, but I've also seen their stuff. Like, I warn them, and I go downriver, and pretty soon I see all their crap floating by me, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what that was. And so, jet ski accidents, but a lot of guys trying to fish the Mississippi in what we call a dying boat. Me and Sean will see them. We're like, oh, they got the dying boat out. Because I mean, if one dude just leans over too much, it's going to throw 150 gallons of water in. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Wow. But yeah, like I said, you won't see a lot of people fish in those style areas at all. And we love those areas. I mean, it's not every time you'll go over them and you mark fish. I mean, well,
don't put them on YouTube, because you'll see people fishing them just because they can't help it. After a while, I mean, my bridge spot, I'd never seen anybody anchor on that bridge like I do. They're always off the bridge, because they're scared to get a little creosote on their bridge and get bashed up against it. Like the dam walls that I go up on. I'll get my boat slammed on a concrete dam wall all day. Nobody ever did that. Now they see me do it and they go, we're going to do it. I mean, I've seen people bring out car tires and, they bring out planks of wood to try to save their boats. And I just don't care about mine. I've got creosote all up and down it. I've got dents all over it.
You learn quick on the ones that watches your channels what to do and not to do. So, we've definitely learned. We don't have a lot of good service on our river. So, only certain areas we got service.
Yeah, and that's true for me too, because I enjoy having spots that I don't share. I'll share the scenario. I'll talk about them. I'll talk about what makes them good. I'll even show a couple of pictures. But I don't enjoy going and seeing somebody in a spot that it took me 10 years to figure it out, you know, or 20 or 30.
That's it.
You know, I used to guide clients, and I told them, I said, look, I am here to teach you how to fish on your own water. I am not here to teach you my spots so that when I come back, your boat is sitting in one of my spots, because it took me 15 years and a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of sweat to figure these things out. I don't need you coming back. And you know what? Luckily, I had a good enough client list that people were good enough. I never saw another person in not one of my clients. I didn't.
I think that's the big difference between lakes and rivers. Is in rivers, there's guys go see the picture in the background. They go steal your hole, and then there's guys in your hole every time you go. But in a lake, I can post a picture with the deal in the background, and I know damn well next week they ain't gonna be there. They just, in a lake, it's wide open. They got all this different stuff to move around. They don't just sit here for 2 weeks at a time. Weather changes, it pushes them. Wind changes, it pushes them. Temperature changes, it pushes them.
It's true. The same thing is true on a river, except for there's a lot less acceptable habitat. It would be acceptable if the epic spot didn't exist. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're in those epic spots every time. And it's not that they sit there for 2 weeks. A flathead might. A flathead definitely will at certain stretches. And that's what I'm talking about my clients, not really blue cat. But like, I may catch them within a quarter mile of the dam 1 week, and then it looks like the surface of the moon the next week. There's nothing. They're all down. They've moved 2 miles down or 3 miles down. Maybe one ledge on the outside bend has got a multitude of fish on Thursday and none on Friday. It's kind of the same with blues because they are highly migratory. But as far as river goes, when you find spots, and a lot of them are unconventional, like I'll tuck in between the bank and a moored barge, and there's barely enough room for my boat to fit in it. You never see anybody in there, because if something fails, they might get crushed into that because of the current and be stuck, and nobody will ever find them. But I'm not scared. I'm too dumb to be scared. So, I've almost gotten smashed by barges a couple times, because I didn't hear them hook up, and here I was in between the bank and a barge. I didn't hear them hook up. It was at night, and all of a sudden I'm like in a big trash compactor. And luckily I just put it in reverse, and it ended up swaying back out, and I actually got out of there. But I try not to die.
What style of boat do you fish from, Tim?
I got a 1872 tunnel hull Sea Arc Super John with a 150 jet on it, so that I could run those shallow rivers, tributaries, and do what I had to do. Now, I think if all I was doing, because I ran those jets back when I guided, because I needed to run shallow tributaries for the pre-spawn channel cat migration, as well as the flathead situation on the Rock River, and then but if I only fished the Mississippi, I'd probably move to a prop. Except for it's really advantageous when I'm trying to move through those high trees, with a jet, because I'll just zigzag my boat and push through and see what that bottom looks like before I fish it. And so I'll be going over like giant limbs that are under the water, only like that. Sometimes I rock over them and push and do all that other crap. But but jets are very inefficient to run. They're very expensive to run.
Tim, I've got to know your true holes that you've been known to go to catch big fish. How much do you look around for new stuff, or do you get into a groove of basically going
like
back
a milk run? Well, I have formed a milk run everywhere that I consistently fish for probably the last 20 years. So there's probably a 20. So let's just say it like this. If I go to St. Louis area, I've got 30 spots. 10 of them are great usually. The second 10 are sometimes good, and then the last 10 are just occasionally good. So it depends on what the water's doing, and I will shuffle those 30 in importance according to the season, what fish I'm after, and whatever. So it's kind of like a complicated computer algorithm, if you get what I mean, but it's in here. So I'll be like, okay, so it's 19 feet. That's 4 feet too high. They've shut the water off at this dam, or they're letting way too much out. That one down there, it's not pulling any. I know where I need to go. I'm gonna fish mid range. I'm gonna look for water over 50 because it's been dropping. I look at the water level the previous 7 days more than I do the days that I'm going to be there, because I want to know where they've moved to, because I don't have a week to find them. Sean and I will like leave at 8 o'clock in the morning. We don't get there till noon. We're ready to go in 5 hours. In 5 hours, it's showtime. So I need to put that shit together in my head, find some fish, decide which is the best time, where to anchor, and what baits to use, and what blah blah blah. And sometimes there is no choice. It's like, we got to do the same damn thing as we did last week.
So when since you started going live, when you first started going live, did it screw up your fishing a little bit because you thought, well, I set this live at this time and now I got to go live?
Yeah.
And over
kind
time, have you figured, I'm going to go out here and give myself enough time to find what I need to find to make sure I have
it was a little bit rough in the beginning, because when you say you're going to go live at 5, you best be getting live at 5. And if you only got 2 hours to decide where to fish, you better hope that you were right in your mind on the way there and the fish are where you suspect them to be. But that's not always the case. I have been on a live a couple times and went, oh crap, they're not where I expected them to be. They're not acting the way I want them to act. Blah blah blah. We ended up salvaging it most of the time, but we did some lives in some areas that should have been good, weren't, because there's 20 commercial nets in my area, like pounded thick. And so we kind of got skunked one night on a live flathead fishing in June. We were blue cat / flathead fishing, and we got rained on, and the commercial nets were horrible, and I didn't have any fish where I needed them to be, and the bite wasn't that good. So I was like, that was terrible. I still left it up though, because I don't want I want people to get the right idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reality of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's fishing.
Yeah.
But I don't like taking a beating, especially when there's people watching.
No.
So I learned pretty early on, if I'm going to do a live, I want to make damn sure that I go out there and find what I need to find to make sure I'm going to catch big fish on that live.
Well,
it doesn't always work.
Mine is all just confidence, because I've been doing it so long, and I know that I can really kind of ramble through pattern A, B, C, D. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. So what I choose to do is I talk to the people, and I teach, and we have conversations. Like it's hard to converse with people. I can't even see the chat right now, and I'm sure there's people like, Epic, what about this and what about that? It's kind of fun on my own, because we'll get the donkey drinks going, a little bit. The stupid question about how you guys feel about pay legs. Oh, don't even get me started on that, Donovan. That is the scourge of the earth as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, we'll get the donkey drinks out. And we talk about, we'll talk about the scenario. We'll talk about the way the bite is. We'll move. We'll say, okay, we're going to start here, and we just leave it rolling. And sometimes we'll do 20 minutes riding and shoot. All 150 people are still in there. The bite's been terrible, and they're still rooting for you. So it's good. It's good.
I think you watched us when we went up and fished Texoma one time, and I said I come here, and I started the live when I got to the lake, and I'm going to have to take you guys through the full process of finding the fish, and it might take me 3 hours.
Yes,
but luckily, eventually, I did find the fish on that trip. And
now you'll if you're ever going to watch one of my lives that I do that, I usually say from first anchor till last.
Yeah.
That means we haven't been able to scout much. This is going to be an exploratory, get in the boat with Epic and Sean Sean's going to make you laugh, and I'm going to bore you with some science, and we're going to throw some donkey baits. And that's what we do.
But I do have a lot better time if I can go look before my live starts.
Oh, yeah.
And I've learned for my best shows, I need at least
try.
a couple of hours
Yeah.
of look time.
And my look time is better at 5 instead of 2. Two is a little rough because I've got a lot of area to look at because my fish are spread out like which yours are too. But I might have to do 3 miles between just marking fish that aren't drum and other stupid fish.
Right.
Because those are all, drum, Asian carp, they're all over. But to find those big catfish, sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I don't find them at all. They're so belly to the bottom sometimes, and I know they're still there. They didn't leave. They didn't like leave. And I've been in a situation where I couldn't mark big fish. I could mark mediocre fish, and all of a sudden, after 3 days, they get up off the bottom and then they go to eating. And so and this 3-day cycle thing. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah. I think sometimes these really biggest fish, they don't eat every day.
No.
Most definitely.
And the bite can be terrible for 3 days. I mean, terrible. All across the country.
Yeah. I see the same thing. My guys that are out east are like
watching
YouTube
and
they're like,
TikTok,
what was it? Because
Yep.
their weather was not the same weather pattern as mine. It's like what like
Exactly.
there's so many more things than just weather that apparently determine the same bite out on the East Coast as we're having in Texas.
Yep.
And we're 3 days weather system. Is 3 days apart. So
yep, and that's probably one of the biggest mysteries that I've come upon since getting back. Because I went like totally media dark. I didn't write for anybody. I didn't do the ProCats thing. I didn't do any seminars for like 20 years, and so yeah, they do. Yeah, so it's just one of those. It is an epiphany. Mystery. There is something to it, but I can't fully put my fingers on it yet. If I had more time, I probably would come up with a good answer, or at least a plausible answer as to why it goes into a 3-day cycle. And I knew that about my river where I fish. There is a 3-day cycle. The bite is going to be trough like terrible for a couple of days, and it's going to peak hard for one day, and it's going to go down a little bit the second day, and then it's going to drop off to nothing again and be crap for another day or a half, 2 days.
Even
but I didn't know it happened all over the country.
Even on the terrible bite days, I know since you used to do it for a living and you guided that you have to be able to put fish in the boat even on the worst freaking days where
but luckily
95% of the anglers are getting skunked that day.
Luckily,
what are you able to do that's different? Because I'll be honest, some of my best days sometimes are on the day that most guys are getting smoked.
Yes, absolutely. But the one thing I didn't have to do is I didn't have to do 28 days in a month guiding for blues. I did 28 days a month in May, 28 days for channel cats, and then I would switch over to flatheads onto the Mississippi, and I would do 28 days there. I would sleep in the truck because I'm an hour and a half from flatheads there. I'm an hour from good channel cat spot, but I could force flatheads to bite when I'm on. If I fish every day, I keep track. I know exactly where they're at. They don't fool me too much. I would know what I'd have to do, whether I got to go in, like you were saying, I'm going to be 3 feet from them. I'm going to be 2 feet. I'm going to be right smack in front of their face.
Change your presentation.
Yes. And the harder the bite, the faster I move. Believe that or not. I just don't wait. So with clients in the boat, I would sometimes, with channel cats, because they were located and not moving, but I had quite a bit of good cover to fish for big male channel cats, I might anchor 50 times a day. I mean, move. But with flatheads, I might do 25 anchors a day. And my average for in the month of June on flatheads was 10 flatheads a day. That's for 28 days. That's 280 flatheads. It was actually more than that, but that was my average. Sometimes it was only 1 or 2. Sometimes it was 12. Sometimes it was 15. I did a weekend where we caught 42 flatheads in one single weekend. But I mean, that's getting with it. And that's June. It's predictable location. Yes, the water was right. I had a client in from Florida, And I had known him for quite a while, and I'm telling you, it was pretty darn fantastic weekend. But channel cats, I had a 25 fish between 4 and 15 pounds, or you don't pay me.
So Facebook user says, Tim, on a river that's not known for large flatheads, would you fish a pile of timber, big boulders in the water, or stump fields, all water ranging from 3 to 25 feet, almost no current at 81 degrees water temperature?
I was excited until that last part.
Spawn
that last
is
part just
on.
kind of killed. That rained on my parade. He was naming everything. I'd be like, yes, 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 no current. What? So yes, I would probably stay out of the stump field during the day, unless it was, depending on where he's from, because the closer to the height of the actual flathead spawn, the shallower you can present during the day and at
So
night.
they generally like to move shallow to into their wallows, right?
Absolutely.
So I know guys that target fish during the spawn.
Yep.
They say if you're going to get one, you need to be shallow.
7 feet, 5 to 7 feet. 5 to 7 feet is pretty good. But I'll still catch fish in 15 during that.
Right.
During that, but I'm going, if
not all fish spawn in 3 to 7 feet of water.
No, they don't.
Right?
Some flatheads spawn
I've
deep.
seen guys pulling them off of deep,
Yep.
not really deep, but I would say mid-depth rocky ledges.
Yeah, well, it's pre-spawn, and I caught that last flathead that I put on TikTok in probably 17, 18 foot of water, and no cover near it. We focused on cover all day and didn't do very well until we went to a basic drop situation with hard current and basically like a big basin hole. And, I had to use cut bait to do it. Facebook user, what's up, fellas? Yep. But yeah, to answer that guy's question, I would probably do all of the above, probably as fast as I could to listen to the fish. And that's another thing you were asking me. If I had customers in the boat, I had to learn real quick that it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter how I want to fish. I got to listen to and I got to keep my mind open, but yet I got to be focused. I can't run amok. I can't just start doing all kinds of crazy shit with, Christmas tree ornaments and dragon and whatever. I still had to stay in my mantra, but I would have to move and focus and listen to the fish. If I got a bite, that told me something. I paid attention. So I'd try to duplicate that. If I found fish in 12 foot of water with this amount of current, I'm going to have to try to reproduce. And I go, okay, I know where this, and this is. Now, to say I'm doing my milk run stuff because I've fished it for 20 years, some of those things, but I'll still take at least 2 to 3 days a year and go somewhere I've never went. Like Sean and I are going to go flathead fishing at Keokuk, and I haven't traditional flathead fished at Keokuk for 20 years. We happen to catch 25 flatheads in 2 days, and I know it's good, but I am not all that, I don't know it the back of my hand. I'm just going to have to look at the water, look at my fish finder, see what the current is, and present baits, and then listen to the fish. If they're, if I can contact them on drops, I'm not going to go from wood to wood to wood to wood. I'm going to go from wood to rocks to drops to basin holes. Then I might hit where you have a side channel go through. The main channel might be 40 foot. The side channel might be 20 foot in a deep spot. Might have 8 foot and all kinds of timber. And then maybe I'll at the same time, I'm going to throw in 8 foot. I'm going to throw in 12 foot. I'm going to throw in 15 foot off the ledge. And then I might throw all the way across and hit the mud flat on the other side, and let it kind of sweep till it catches something and snags and see what I can shake up.
That was my next question, is how, when you go to position your rods in certain areas, are you basically straight out, or are you actually fanning them out?
I do a lot of 90-degree casting.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to, because I was using my channel cat and flathead mentality, of which I need to ledger right in front. So I'm, whatever. But I really increased my odds of catching big fish once I started taking my outside rods and throwing them out, letting them dribble till they get caught on either clay, rock, or wood, or just the incline, maybe the ledge. And I could literally target a ledge better But one of the keys is when I used to try it, I thought I needed a tight line all the time. But with the advent of circle hooks changed that game, because now I can throw it out, let it hit bottom, strip off a bunch of line so that it pegs right there. My line is still going downstream, but my bait's over here.
Yeah.
But with circle hooks, you don't even have to hardly set the hook. You just pick it up and start reeling, and it still works.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really good, because when I was still doing the old 4-aught bass hook, because that's the best I could get, you couldn't have a bunch of slack in your line, or it's just not going to work. But with those circle hooks, it gets caught, and as you bring the tension, because it's just barely caught, and all of a sudden it buries in the side of the mouth, or in the upper lip.
So with the high success rates you've had, and with how long you've been doing it, I know you've got to be trying to get better even at this stage in the game. What's changing for you where what you think is different than the way you fished 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you guided?
I throw heavy with blues. I throw heavier weights in the last probably 5 years than I did previously.
Trying to stick it in that heavy current?
Yes, because I'm able to, let's just say I'm fishing areas that I can't fish because the bottom rises too hard. I can't fish, like, I can't move the boat up enough to throw out to hold that bait down. So I'm going to have to, when that bottom is going down, maybe it goes from 13 to like 20, but I can't be way up here, because all my line would do is seesaw on those rocks. Yeah. Okay, so now I get my boat right there. I know I'm targeting stuff over here, including a ledge, but I'm also shotgunning rods straight down at the precipice where the bottom meets where that rise goes.
Right.
That is
sweet spot.
That is a sweet spot right there, especially with flatheads, especially with giant blues.
Yep.
The littler blues seem to hang back, and so do big ones. But when they come to feed, they're going along the bottom, and they meet that rise, that hard rise, and so they'll run this way and they'll run that way, and they'll even nose into this thing. So I actually will set them like maybe it's 30 foot behind the boat, like straight down, and that's at the crest. I'll actually put another down rod halfway up the boat, straight down, and it's only 14 foot deep, and I've pegged this thing against a hard drop. And here's my bait right here, and they're just nosing in like that. Because one of the things about the bait fish in the Mississippi is we have a lot of deep water bait fish that are not plankton feeders. There is a lot of suckers, but suckers aren't what I'm talking about. The rocks of wing dikes and drops hold those little tiny freaking bugs, and I don't even know what they're called. I should look that up. But they're all over our stuff in the Mississippi. The logs, you bring a little stick in your boat, throw it on the deck, and all of a sudden you get these little bitty tiny bugs all over. Well, that's what the moon eye eat, and we have an extreme amount of moon eye. They're just hard to catch because they like deep water, and so to throw net them in 25 foot of water over rocks, you might as well just take $150 out of your pocket, throw it overboard as you're going down the thing. Hey, here, got some bait, So yeah, it's really tough. Yeah, just that's $150. Yep. There it
Tim,
goes.
I've got a question for you. What tips would you give a guy that's wanting to get started in guiding? What tips would you give them?
Okay, here's the thing. If you want to get started in guiding, it's probably easier now than it probably ever was. Because when I had to start guiding, I had to start my own website in which I could be found. So I actually got catfishing.com. Lucky. I don't know how in the hell I even got that. It was just so early, nobody even thought about it. But it was the most searched for catfish term on the web. But now you can do Facebook. Facebook has a huge reach. I don't do Facebook a lot because I go through my feed like this, and if I click on something, it starts me at the dang top again. I'm like, I'm too old for this crap. I can't start at the top again. I want to start, and I'm like, come on. I already saw all this stuff. It's going to take me like 5 minutes to go up the thing. So anyways, to starting guiding, there's a lot of guides out there. All right. There's not very many guides that'll share some sort of information.
Yeah,
a lot of them are pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah.
But if you learn to talk about not your spot, not your whatever, talk about the nature of the fish or your experiences, telling stories. I mean, I've been on the boat with other guides. I went on Santee Cooper with a guide. I had a couple friends that were guides, and some of them were terrible conversationalists, but they flat out caught big fish. They'd only say 5 words the whole time. We'd only go to 5 spots. It was the most boring thing in the world, but they could catch big fish. So I was like, okay. But I would have to say, take great pictures, take great video, talk to your client, vet your clients, because I don't know what kind of fishing situation that you've got, but like I would have to vet my clients. I would have to say, okay, I'm going to steer them towards one of the 3 things. It's either fast action, all day channel cats, blah blah blah, or is he somewhat of a monster hunter? Is he gonna, is he gonna be satisfied with 3 fish all day? What are you here to learn, or are you here to whatever? Or if you're the real adventure guy, I'm gonna take you to Keokuk or Alton. It's gonna take us 5 hours to get there. You're gonna have to pay for the hotel room, and it's 2-day minimum. It's gonna cost you $1,200. So very rare of that. I'd only do like 8 or 10 trips a year down in that region. But I kind of didn't want to do a lot of guide trips in that region either. I kind of priced it so it was a little bit too difficult, because I wanted to fish how I wanted to fish, because guiding is kind of like tournaments.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I'm not a fan of doing tournaments. I've done them, but I don't like it, because I want to fish where I want to fish, how I want to fish, and the fish I want to catch. Now, I've fished on the Mississippi when tournaments were going on, and I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, or break my arm patting myself on the back. But yeah, if I would have turned in my fish, I'd have blew away the tournament. But I didn't care, because I won my own tournament anyway, because I was either guiding or just fishing for myself. And so I'm like, yeah, I get that question about 100 times a year. How come you're not doing tournaments? Well, because I don't want to get up at 5:30 in the morning. I don't want to go down there and fish for 5 hours in pre-fish when everybody else is. They're throwing their old cut bait in, and every fish I catch is puking up everybody's cut bait. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
So Facebook user says, Epic, if I was to send you a message on, say, TikTok asking for tips and tricks, could you help? I'm decent and know some, but barely scratched the surface. Chris had helped me a ton in the past with blues. Now, I don't know who this is, but apparently it's one of my friends.
Yeah.
How would somebody, if they were looking for advice, how do they get advice from a legend like you? Because you've given me a ton of advice, and we've become friends.
Message me, if I've got time. I usually try to spend time with people, because I mean, I remember the days of wanting to ask somebody, and there wasn't anybody to ask, so I thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, that's why I do this. I love seeing people that are so happy. I've got, I don't know how many messages that people send me that are just private messages that say, Epic, I've been watching your stuff, and I have done really well. Thank you so much for helping, all that stuff. And that's pretty huge to me.
I think that's cool.
I've got to say myself, man, I have learned so much tonight, listening to you, that I feel like I said earlier, that I can't wait for the weekend to get here so I can go to the river.
Nice.
I can put that knowledge that I have actually learned tonight, and I'm one of those. I'll tell you, I don't know everything. I promise you. I love listening. I love being that sponge. That's how you learn stuff. And I've got to say, I hope everybody in here tonight has, taken away some kind of knowledge that maybe they didn't know. And
all right. I'm gonna spill the biggest secret there is in catching multiple giant fish over years. Be a complete savage. I'm telling you, that is one of the biggest differences. When a lot of people are down about it, it's very rare that I want to go before anybody else that's in the boat with me. I usually, if I was by myself, I would probably stay till the next day. It's just never giving up. It's never wanting to. Now, I'm more apt to go home at midnight if we've already kicked ass all day. I'd be like,
hey, man.
Yes. Are we going to do any better? Probably not. But when it's tough, that's when I grit and I dig my nails in, and I start thinking, and I start recalculating. What did I do wrong in the morning? Why I should have done this. I've already revamped what I would do had I. If I could do last Saturday over again, I'd have spent more time shallower, because I didn't have any idea that the water, because I hadn't been on it, was 70 degrees probably 4 or 5 days, which is going to affect, even though we caught some deep, I should have been targeting stuff about 8 to 7 more than I did. I targeted 10 to 14, 15, and I should have hit a lot more shallow wood. And we may have, even though the bite was bad, no doubt, but we might have scared up a super monster that way. But that's how I think. I'm always beating myself up on the way home. It doesn't matter. Sean and I'll be like, when it was awesome, where we were like reliving it and high-fiving down the road and talking about what we're going to do next time. But if it was tough, I'll be reformulating. We'll be talking, for the whole 4 hours home.
That's exactly right. I wake up, on that next day, after fishing all night and going, okay, I should have done this, I should have done that. But that's what drives me, is to be even better. I'm more of a competitor with myself than I am anyone else.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know what? That's the only way to be. It's one of the reasons why I love team sports. I'm big into football, loved all that stuff. I still have great friends that we all played football together. We love to win. We love to kick ass and do all that stuff. But I do love the fact that I'm against myself and the fish. It's just me and the fish. Yeah.
That's it.
That's
Everybody out there in chat tonight, I know, has basically taken away so much knowledge from our show tonight. And I'll be the first to tell you, thank you so much for everything you've taught me tonight. And I hope everybody out there has enjoyed it, because I've really had a blast myself. This has been awesome.
Well, and I'm glad you like to learn, and a lot of people don't get me. If you're not a cat fisherman, they're like, what do you do with those fish? You eat them? I'm like, no.
I'm sitting here. I'm ready. Me and Rebecca, we're ready to come up and fish with you. I mean, we'll bring whatever. We're ready to come up, because I would love, that would be a dream, to be on a boat with you, just to fish with you, and I know you hear that a lot, but it would be a blast to fish with you. I can promise you.
Well, how far do you live from Chris?
I'm in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
I told Epic I'm coming up, so when I make that run up there, I'll hit you up, man.
That's it, because it's been a blast, and it would be an honor to be on the same boat.
Well,
that's for sure.
Stop that. I'm just another guy. I'm telling you. It's, I'm quirky, and maybe I'm a little weird. And maybe that's kind of the secret too, to catching big fish. You got to be a little bit weird about it.
I think that's probably a common thread for most guys that are really hardcore into catching big fish, is you definitely got to be a little different than just your regular dude. I'm fine with that.
I see those. I could never be this. I don't look down on them, but I see the Sunday morning guys. You know what I'm talking about. They roll up in their bass boat that they've kept in the garage, and everything's perfect. And they've got their khaki pants on, and they're like button up church shirt, and they go out there and they flick some baits around a little bit for like an hour. It gets to like 11 o'clock. They're looking at their watch, because the old lady, he's got to be home. He's got to be home. So he's got the boat all loaded up and everything. Never got dirty. Never caught a fish. Never nothing. But he was out there. Nothing wrong with that. But I couldn't be that guy.
Yeah.
Don't look at my boat after a fishing trip. Myself and Rebecca, I'm out there with a trash bag. I mean, we've got stuff everywhere. You're fishing out of it. I mean, it ain't posted.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool.
Hey,
guys come on my boat, and they're like, this boat definitely sees a lot of fish.
I probably
last Friday, I actually cleaned out mine from 3 o'clock. I was working on that thing from 3 o'clock until midnight. I had donkey skeletons that was like paper thin. They had nothing in them, blah, 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 like stuffed behind the cooler. We had like there was a leftover sandwich in like the last trip that we took, leftover sandwich in the old cooler. It was gone. I mean, it's pretty disgusting. And I power washed blood that's been on it for 3 years, like all over my motor, all over one of the 80 pounders took a giant turd right on the side of my boat, and it looked like heron shit. It was just white stuff, and I finally power washed that off.
That's what basically we got more sand in the bottom of our boat than they do at the beach out here. So
Yep, sticks and scales. So underneath, when I take the boat down the road, evidently there's an air vortex right where my steering wheel is, like the console, because that thing is like, it's like it's snowed in there with carp scales, and they'll build up in there over the season. And then when I pull out, like I've got a couple of ammo boxes that I put in there, it's got all my gear in it. I pull those things out, and it's like this heap of freaking carp scales, and you throw it up, and it's like it's snowing.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Wow.
my boat by the end of winter, it gets so slimed up that on it, if it hadn't rained in a while and you get a little bit of mist, it's like ice skating on that.
It'll
thing.
reinvigorate. It'll just
treacherous.
puff back up. Yep.
Wow.
It's like an elephant blew its nose on it.
Well, I'll tell you, like I said, we've had an amazing crowd in here tonight. I mean, our chat has been, it's amazing. And, Tim, I mean, everybody, like I said, I'll get back. I know everybody in this chat's going to take home something tonight from what you've told us. And it's been unbelievable.
That's the greatest thing about doing it. I mean, shoot, it's not for the money. I think I've made about $12 since I started. Besides the people that donate, but I'm like on like movies and stuff, like putting up videos. I don't think anybody's. I haven't checked. I think my last month was like $12.94. It's not the money.
You can almost get you a Happy Meal.
Yeah. No, but there's some really awesome people in, and I can't see them, but they're probably in here, that they support. They come in, they talk with me and Sean. They can't wait to see our shenanigans. They can't wait to see me get a tooth knocked out by a catfish and
that was awesome.
And, scratch up and down a dam wall and land some monsters and do all that stuff.
That's it.
And if you don't love Sean, something's wrong with you, because that guy, he cracks me up, and I've known him for 30 years. You never know what he's going to say. You always know what he's going to do, though. He's a straight up great guy, but man, he comes up with some dandies, and he's censored himself pretty good on YouTube. Pretty good. Right. We both did. You ought to heard our first video. It was cut. I mean, the first video was horrible.
Because y'all curse? Because of your curse?
Oh, yeah. I just had to cut. There was like 3 fish I just had to hack out.
I'm the same way. Especially if we get a good one on. I'm like, holy bleep.
Yep. Bleep.
Look at the size of that. Bleep.
Yeah.
I've had to go back and watch my stuff and be like,
yes.
You gotta stop doing that.
I do too. My wife's like, I'll get home at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm watching the live. She goes, "What are you doing? Didn't you just do that?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm working on if I was attentive or not, if I actually answered questions right, because sometimes I'd be like, oh my gosh, I missed the whole intent of that, because I'm in the moment. I'm reading the thing, and I'm like,
how much of the chat do you just completely miss? And you thought you were keeping up with it, and you're like, damn, my friends are asking all these questions. That would have been great to be able to answer those. I just ghosted them. I feel terrible for that.
Luckily, I've got a Sean. So when I'm like psychoing on the rods, being my psycho self, and cranking stuff and throwing stuff, he's up there, he's watching, he's talking to people, and then I'll trade. And usually, and Sean says it like this, he goes, "Yeah, I just get on there and say stupid stuff, and then you go up there and talk a bunch of science. It works great."
That's like Rebecca. She, the chat loves Rebecca because I'm one of those. I'm doing,
she's like the straw that stirs the drink, man. I mean,
yes.
I'm totally lost. I'm proud of myself. I look down at chat and going like, yes, I've done it. Normally, when we're live, I'm really, she's always. Yep. They're the one that want to talk with her anyway. I mean. So,
yeah. I mean, holy moly. Well, I remember one guy that has been following me since day one, really great guy. He, I've never met him, but, he always comments on stuff and, whatever. His name's Michael Cashmore. And we landed a super giant one night in a chat and broke the net. My old net was a musky net. a giant hoop, but it was horrible. He's like, you guys got here's the money. Get one of those hydro webs, and we're like, all right, and that's what we do. I put whatever chat money, I put it in one account. I've got a fishing credit card, so all the expenses that it will pay for, like I just put it on that, and then I just dump all whatever chat money, I just dump into that, and I'm telling you, it's helped a bunch because gas got ridiculous. Oh my gosh, we'll spend $400 in gas in a weekend just to do 2 live shows.
Yeah, that's for sure,
and 2 nights hotel. I mean, holy moly, and let alone, everything else. But I'm very appreciative because the people are awesome. They just are. I got to tell you a quick story about, the guy, he just goes by Mark. He's in everybody's lives. He's probably in here right now. You know who I'm talking about? Mark. He's on TikTok. He's in everybody's comments. It doesn't matter what. If he watches your video, he will always comment. Well, I was guiding channel cats, and his brother PJ called me, and about 10 minutes. No, it's probably an hour into the guide trip, and so it's PJ and his brother Mark ends up being the guy that's in everybody's stuff. He's really appreciative, really great guy. He just looks at me and he goes, Tim, he goes, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm going to tell on myself. He goes, I was a skeptic. He goes, me and my brother have been catfishing forever, and I came on this trip to debunk this promise of 25 catfish over from 4 pounds to 15 pounds. He goes, dude, we blew past that by 11 o'clock. I mean, we were catching doubles and triples, and he'd never seen anything like it. And that was not an unusual thing. I'd always have the one believer guy, and then the buddy that's like a total freaking didn't believe it at all because he never watched any of my stuff, whatever. So if the guy that's thinking about being a guide, those are little things to keep in mind. There's always going to be a naysayer, and then there's the guy that really wants to go. And when you first start out, you can't be expensive, because if you are, it just cancels you. But once they've went with you and they have the trip of their life, or it was a great experience, then my biggest thing was repeat customers. I mean, shoot, I had repeat customers for, a matter of fact, I didn't even take any new clients for almost 10 years. It was just repeat customers. They just enjoyed it so much. And then, I have a no fail policy. I mean, you just don't fail. And I did give some free trips away because there was nothing I could do. I mean, I tried everything and they knew.
Occasionally it happens,
It does. It doesn't happen often, because if I tried to guide in July or like January, it would have happened a lot. But I knew the catfish calendar, and so the month of May, channel cats, June, blah blah blah. July was off, August, September, and October, and we're good. But yeah, and definitely just DM me on the old TikTok, and I'll get back to you somehow. We'll talk.
Yeah, don't even try to find Tim on Facebook, because
no, it's messy.
It ain't happening.
Maybe y'all love Facebook, but man, I can't. I can only watch so many pets, food, and what else do they have big on Facebook? It's pets, food, and what else that comes across the feed all the time? Drama. Oh, I'm a no drama. I do not like drama.
That's the worst part of it. But I'll tell you, I used to use Facebook for fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only been doing it 2 years, but that's all I do on it is fishing. I don't look at anything else besides fishing, or my wife, she posts stuff and I'll look at her stuff. But
my wife,
it's 100% fishing. And I hear guys say, I can't stand all the stuff that comes across, and I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't even, to me, it's just, I visit 5 fishing groups, and every one of my friends is fishermen.
Chris, I have a lot of family and I have a lot of friends that are all hooked up into Facebook. And if I don't accept a friend request, and if I'm friend to request people I don't know, it's just not going to work out too good.
Uh,
Because you got like 100 friend requests of people that are going to show you babies, dogs, and like ice cream sandwiches. That's it.
yeah,
They're
see, I don't look at any of that crap. I don't ever
No,
thumbs up any of it. So I think maybe the algorithm's like, this guy's not into that crap, so won't even show it to him. But
and maybe I haven't tried it long enough because I was just like, oh my gosh, how do I get through this?
yeah, see, mine is just 100% fishing, and so I'll tell guys, if it weren't for Facebook, I wouldn't like. I got a lot of sponsors that help pay for me and my son's fishing. I wouldn't have any of them if it wasn't for Facebook. And
I don't have any. I don't have a single sponsor.
That to me, that's crazy that you don't have people just lining up to help you.
They don't.
Because for me, I'm just a weekend angler who fun fishes with my son, but I got a lot of guys that want to help us, do
right.
what we do. And I think that's cool. So for me, Facebook, what helped me do all that. So when guys talk about Facebook, I'm like, well, that's really not the experience that I have with it. I do see some of the trolling and shit like that I don't like, but I mean,
I'll take that back. Sean and I do have like one group that is what I would call sponsors, and that's the people that watch our live shows and donate. Yeah. I mean, they're very consistent. They're always in there. I put up something. Hey, we're usually in the truck. I'll take like a dumb picture of me and Sean going down the road. We're ready to go catch some monsters. There's 75 people that got can't.
Yeah, well, I'll come into your lives and somebody will say, "Here's some gas money," or "Here's some rigs." You just broke off. Here's $15 for a couple of rigs.
That's
pretty cool that people are willing to do that.
Oh, they're awesome.
And for everybody, Tim, I can't imagine nobody knows how to where they can go watch you and stuff. For everybody that might be new to the chat, where can they go and see your videos and stuff? For the ones that might that's new.
Just Epic Catfish on YouTube. They can go to Epic Catfish on TikTok if they want. And I don't know if I explained this earlier, but I put a lot of time into the videos I have up now. I haven't put a new one up for a while, but I plan to. But I'm not that great at editing, and I'm kind of picky, so I might have 25 or 30 hours into one, and boy, I don't really have that kind of time anymore. My computer's old, and like from the time I turn it on to where I could actually work with it is like 20 minutes, and then if I try to upload something too big, it just sits and spins, or I try to save something and it doesn't save. It's just a nightmare. And I can do the TikTok thing on my phone, which I talked with Stan. He said you can do and I have a new phone, so I might be able to do just like a double duty. So whatever I show on TikTok, I can put on YouTube too. And then oh, look at that. There's Catfish Heroes right there. We got a great group of fans. He's right. They make it possible.
Guys that don't know Catfish Heroes, that's Tim's fishing partner.
Yep.
Sean, they make a freaking great team.
Yes.
Always fun to watch. Informative. Just really both really great dudes. If you haven't watched them, go over to Epic Catfish. They do lives on YouTube, and now he's doing them on TikTok. So
I don't know if I'll do lives on TikTok because
I don't do TikTok a whole lot, but your stuff on TikTok seems to do pretty good.
Yeah,
and you're the one who told me, Chris, you need to get on TikTok to grow.
And YouTube went through a period where I would put out a video and they would not put it out, like in the feed. I'd only get like 1,000 views for something I worked on for like 10 hours. I'm like, why am I doing that? What and it wasn't a bad video. I mean, one of them got intro of the year. Blah, blah, blah.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it only got like 1,000 views, but yet I put on like a 1 minute video or a 3 minute video, and it gets like 180,000 views. My big catfish, I don't think is over 50,000 views.
Yeah.
If mine would break 200-300, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So at 500, I'm blown out the water. So
yeah.
Like I said, we had in chat.
YouTube's a tricky thing. You'll go see some guy who's bank fishing up in BFE, catching 8 eaters, and he's got all these followers, and you're like,
Yep.
What am I doing wrong?
And it's like something that just anybody could go do without any experience. I mean, they just go out to a spot and throw some chicken and catch some fish. But you'll see somebody like Epic, who's I consider one of the best in the world, but he's got less than 3,000 subscribers. It makes absolutely no sense. But
they don't.
YouTube's an entertainment thing, so it's not all about the fishing.
They want you to regularly upload, and I do not have the time to regularly upload an actual YouTube video. Now, if I could just do shorts, that'd be fine. I could keep up with that, and they would actually push something. But I mean, the guys that really grind at it, they're in your feed constantly.
Yeah, they're putting out 3 or 4 videos a week. Three a week.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're full time. They can.
That takes all the fun out of it for me.
I know, but also, Sean and I don't live next to big fish water. I couldn't. Put out
y'all got to work just to get to the hole.
I got to work so I can afford to go fishing. I got to drive a half a day. Matter of fact, I got to get bait for 2 days. Cost me 48. You got to drive 80 miles. You know, 20 miles one way to go get the right
beating that you take doing that makes you not want to go do it the very next weekend.
Nope. I want to do it every weekend. I would do it every day. I'd be on the river right now if I could.
That's it.
I would, man. I'm telling you. I get physically upset if I can't. If I know it's monster season and I can't go on a weekend, I get like physically.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's my wife, she'll start planning something like a month in advance. I'm like, you better realize what's fixing to happen, and that ain't working for me. No. So you're gonna need to be planning something else.
June, August, September, October. That's a no-go zone for my wife. It better be like a nuclear disaster, or the king is coming to town, or something. But I'm not going to a freaking a wedding in any of those months. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to a wedding.
Dogging bank anglers, Parker. I am not dogging bank anglers at all, Jerry. I am dogging the guy who goes out and catches 5. I'm not even dogging him. I'm just saying a guy that goes out and catches 5 eaters can have 200,000 subscribers. Yep. And a guy like Tim who goes and catches 100-pounders frequently and almost catches over a 50 every time he's on the water only has 3,000. There's more to YouTube than the fishing part of it.
There is. And, some people just aren't going to get that many subscribers because I think, maybe I'm too old, because the younger guys seem to do really well because there's a lot more young guys and they identify with those guys. If you think about it, the guys that are 20 or 30, and I'm just this old psycho. What do they want? I mean, but then you look, you got, what's his name? Great fisherman. Sean and I were just talking about him the other day. Go fishing because it's good for you. What's his name? Yeah. Great fisherman. He's just an old dude, and he's a fishing machine, and he's got a ton of followers. But he puts in. I mean, he grinds it. I mean, it's 1 to 2 videos a week. 1 to 2 videos a week, and I got really busy with my furniture company, and as soon as I wasn't posting, man, it just went to nothing. And then when I would post something, it just went to nothing there. I was like, because, once you get on a roll, it seems to keep going. But if you get off of that, then you're down in the dumps, and then they make you work your butt off and for a whole bunch for not much return. But, it is what it is. Matter of fact, this week I'm going to see if I can put that, because I did a 5-minute video and put it on TikTok, and I did the whole thing on my phone. It didn't take me 20 hours. It was actually pretty easy. So I'm going to start trying to put that on YouTube for the YouTube people. Because, there's people that they just won't get on TikTok. And that's okay. Because I'm going to tell you what, it'll drive you nuts in the first day or so. you're like, what in the world is going on with this world on TikTok? When you first get the app, it's some of the dumbest things ever. You got to like not like anything or watch anything unless it's fishing. And then you got to like it, you got to watch it, and you got to comment. And pretty soon my feed is like 99% fishing now. I wouldn't say it's all good fishing, but it's at least fishing. I don't have everybody with their, side boob out and all that stuff all over. Because let me tell you something, you heart one of those and you're going to get 100.
Yeah, I see that on Facebook, and I'll see like a girl holding up an 8-pound fish with half of it hanging out.
Yep,
And
don't click on it,
and it's
because
got
that's all you're going to get.
It's got like 300 guys on there, and so I'll look to see who the guys are, because I don't. And I told Jamie that ain't something that I want on as like part of what I'm doing.
Right.
And I'll look on there to see who the guys are to make sure. And it is never, not a single one of the guys that I know that's angling. So I look at it, I'm like, what are these? Why would somebody, what do they really think they're going to get out of giving that girl a heart and sending her a comment?
I don't know.
Weird.
It is weird. It is weird. I've seen that too, and I'm like, oh, very weird. Very weird.
Like some guys say, sex sells, but that ain't going to be the way I do my fishing stuff.
Well, if you want
I got a beautiful wife. I could use her to get a million fucking subscribers. Yeah. But
if you want a million views, get your old lady in a thong and some side boob out and put a fish in her hand. That's all you need.
I'm just not going to do that, man.
No, I'm not either. I'm not saying I didn't ask her to, but my wife would be like, no. In jest, I'm like, hey, why don't you put my bib overalls on? Just get in the boat one time. See what happens. She's like, no.
Man.
Her mother follows me on YouTube, so that would be out already.
Wow. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Tim. It's been a great time, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
We'll definitely have to do it again sometime, and I'm going to come up there and fish with you at some point when we can get all the logistics figured out. But
yep, let me know, because remember, it's the catfish calendar, not ours.
I know. Trust me.
Catfish calendar.
I tell guys too. They're like, Chris, I just want to come fish with you. I'm like, well, when I tell you to come, that's when you come.
That's when you come.
Yep. Let's set this date and you come fishing, because it will never be what you think. But if you give me a week, if you can have some lead time, then I can say, hey, come on, it's time, and we'll go do it. But we do appreciate you coming on. It's been awesome.
Well, thanks for having me on. And matter of fact, good to meet you too there, Carolina. What is your name again? I'm terrible. Jamie. Okay, Jamie. Carolina Lake Weight's good.
Yes, sir.
So it's been a fun show, and I know everybody's enjoyed it tonight. And I thank you myself for coming up, and it's been like I said, we've really enjoyed having you.
And thanks everybody else for coming in and spending time with us. I know this was probably one of the easiest ones to watch. Tim's always he's a mountain of knowledge. He's always got good stories to tell.
Well,
so.
There's never going to be any dead airspace. That's for sure. I'm about like Danny Stone, except for I don't tell stories about mermaids and snapping turtles, or iron pans. I remember I was watching a live coming home, and he talked for like an hour about iron pans that he was like salvaging out of something. I thought it was great. I always like listening to Danny.
Jerry said, new idea for Tim. Put Sean in a banana hammock when fishing.
Yeah. Okay. I think Jerry's the only one that wants to see that.
Gary's been on some giant fish lately, man. I've been enjoying watching Jerry catch those.
Yep.
He's been killing it, man. So congrats, Jerry.
Which is kind of irritating me that I'm not down there yet, but I will. I'm like, gosh, dang it! Jerry's got another big one. I got to get down there, but I know what the drill is. You're going to spend a lot more time this time of year, even down where Jerry is, to contact that amount of fish. They're moving, but they're not it's just not quite right yet, and it's going to fall off here in a little bit. It's going to be just a little influx. It's going to fall off at the spawn. It's going to be like all of July. It's going to be terrible, and then as soon as August 1st comes, we're ready.
That's it. But
all right, guys. Well, we appreciate y'all stopping in and spending some time with us. We'll be back next week with we got JBN, John Bubba New. He's one of the guys over at Mad Cats. He also has company New Slings, Sticking Fat Girls. So a lot of y'all know who he is. That's going to be a good show too. So we appreciate you coming in, Epic. Thanks again, Jamie, for being my co-host and partner in slime. It's fun every week doing this with you, buddy.
Been a blast.
All right, guys. Tight lines. God bless. Azul out.